Hello everyone, am I audible? Okay. Um, Hi, hold on, let me just plug in my laptop. Okay. Hello everyone, I hope you're having a really nice day. Um, we're going to continue with day 2 of our webinar. Um, everything that I taught you guys on day 1, was everything clear? Are there any questions? I was told that I was going too quick, so I'm going to make sure I go a little slower today. And today is a very, very important day. We're going to be studying analysis, which is it's the most important part. So I want you all to really focus. I hope you've all downloaded RevMan 5.4. I sent the links on the group, but Dr. Ahmed did. So let's start.
Doc, how to download the
Okay.
wristband as you talked?
Is it
Because I could not find any links.
okay? So we were already done with the basics of meta-analysis. We know what meta-analysis is all about. We know uh, the types of variables. We know the types of data that's reported in studies. So we're going to move forward from in continuation to what we already know. So we talked about variables, and we talked about how how different studies report different forms of data. So they could report the data in raw. Let me just review that real quick. So different studies report data in different forms. So we know that some studies report data in the raw form, which is just numbers, unprocessed numbers, whatever they see, they report. So for example, for mortality, they see that out of 100 patients in the patient population, 30 have died. So they'll report it exactly like that. So 30 people out of 50 in the drug group died, or 10 people out of 50 in the placebo group died, or got better, depending on what the outcome is. And then the other way they report data is effect sizes. So effect sizes is basically when they process that data and turn it into ratios. So there's three kinds of ratios: risk ratios or odds ratios, and hazard ratios. For dichotomous outcomes, just a quick review. It's when you have two options. So yeah, like yes, no, true, false, married, unmarried, so stuff like that. Okay. And then the effect sizes for continuous outcomes is in the form of mean difference, which is also known as weighted mean difference, and the other one is standardized mean difference. So these are the two forms of data that we can see in studies. So how do we, so now we have the data, we have to pool it and we have to analyze it. How do we pool it? We have two models, two pooling methods. So one is the random effects model and the other is the fixed effects model. You are under no compulsion to use one or the other. There's no hard and fast rule, but we do prefer random effects model because it's simpler, it's easier. However, in cases where you have very high heterogeneity, you have to use the random effects model. Other than that, you can use random effects or fixed effects. We prefer to use random effects, but in cases where you have high statistical heterogeneity, you absolutely do have to use random effects model. What is the difference between these two models? The random effects model, basically, you know that different studies have different methodologies, right? So different people might be conducting the same study, the same randomized control trial or observational study, but they could have slightly different methodologies. No two studies are exactly the same. So randomized effects model, it accounts for those slight differences. So it incorporates this variability into the analysis instead of assuming that all the studies are exactly the same. It's very rare for the study design and methodologies in multiple different studies or two different studies to be the exact same. So the fixed effects model is used when they're exactly the same. So that's a very rare case, obviously. So So in cases where the methodologies are exactly the same, we use fixed effects model. But again, there are differences most of the time, so we're going to prefer to use random effects model. So now we've extracted the data, we know what we're going to do. So now we're on to the analysis section of it. For analysis, as I said before on day one, we have different softwares that we can use. So RevMan, Comprehensive Meta Analyst, Meta Excel, Open Meta Analyst, R is a software. The metaphor package in R can be used. So we can use any of these. So now we move on to data extraction. I want you all to really focus on what I'm doing, and then I want you all to follow along, right? I have three different studies. Remember on day one, I showed you guys this article about a new novel drug being approved by the FDA. It was called resmetirom. So there's three different randomized control trials testing the efficacy and safety of resmetirom, and that's what we're going to use as our example today, right? So I extracted all three. I opened all three of the studies. Now, when I was looking for these studies, when I was screening, I was doing the literature search and screening the studies. I noticed that multiple. It's the same one person, S.A. Harrison. He's worked on multiple different studies on the same topic. So, like for the safety and efficacy of resmetirom, he's done about like 5, 6 studies. But the patient population in 3, 4 of those studies was the exact same. How do I know that? Because the NCT number, which I told you guys on day one, the NCT number was the same in 3 or 4 of those. So you have to make sure that the studies you're including, if they're by the same author, you have to make sure that they have a different NCT number. Just to review, an NCT number is when So an NCT number is when you conduct a randomized control trial, you have to get it registered in your national registry. So most of them get registered in the clinicaltrials.gov registry. So you have to make sure that so when it gets registered in the clinicaltrials.gov registry, you get an NCT number. So you have to make sure the NCT numbers for all of them are different. So I made sure that the NCT numbers for all three of these were different. There were other studies by the same person, but the patient population was same, which, as I said, the NCT number was the same. So I knew that the patient population was the same. So now we have these three studies. Now I'm going to show you how to extract data. First of all, what we use is we
Excuse
generally
me.
use either we use Excel or we use Google
Sorry.
Sheets. Google Sheets is a bit superior to Excel in the sense that multiple people can work on it at the same time. And when you find a topic for a meta analysis, it's imperative that you work very very quickly because almost in all cases, multiple people all over the world are working on the same topic. So you have to make sure you're quick because only one meta-analysis is going to be published on one topic. Unless you're updating a meta-analysis, then you could get another meta-analysis published on the same topic. But you have to make sure you work very quickly. So generally we prefer multiple people, at least 2 people to extract the data. So when you're extracting data on Google Sheets, this is an advantage that you have. You can have multiple people working on the same sheet. But in Excel, you can't do that, obviously. So now I've opened this Excel sheet. I want you guys to do the same. But hold on. Let me just get a few steps covered, and then you can do all of them. You can practice all of them. So I have three. I had 3 books open. You generally need 2 books, okay? So I told you guys on day one that you need to extract data. When you're extracting data, you need 2 kinds of data. One is the baseline demographics, so the baseline characteristics of all the patients in your patient population. You need to have the baselines for all of them, and you need to extract them, and that is very imperative because you have to extract them because this is going to go with your manuscript when your manuscript is submitted for publication, right? So you need to extract this data, and you need to make sure that there are no errors at all in either of these sheets. And the second sheet is for data. So this is the data for the outcomes. So now I'm going to show you how to extract data. You can do this in one of 2 ways, and I'm going to show you both ways. So the first thing to do is go over your the study to see what endpoints or what outcomes they're reporting. So when you were screening for the literature, you obviously read through the abstract, obviously, and hopefully also the full text. But at least read through the abstract when you're screening through the studies. So you get a general idea of what outcomes are being reported by all the studies, and you have a general idea of what the common outcomes between all of the studies are. And you only analyze data for the outcomes that are common to at least two of the studies, out of all of the studies that you're including. Because if you have data for an outcome from only one study, you can't really analyze it. You can't compare anything. So it's really no use. So when you're reading through the studies, you'll see a heading, a section labeled endpoints or outcomes or primary endpoints or primary outcomes and stuff like that. So you kind of understand that this is what they're reporting. This is where they mention the outcomes that they're reporting in their study. So we're going to read through this to try to understand what outcomes they're reporting, and then whatever outcomes they're reporting, it's mostly also given in tabular form, but you also have to read through the study to make sure that you're not missing anything that they maybe did not give in the table, but they mentioned in the text. So this is what I'm talking about here. They have given us a table. Let's just read through all of the tables first. So this is table number 1, which is the demographic and clinical characteristics of the patients at baseline. So this is very imperative and very necessary. As I said, we have to extract data for at the baseline as well. So this is that. And when extracting data for the baseline, you're going to use this table. So you're going to extract data for the age, the male number percentage, the race, and the ethnicity, and the body weight, BMI. You don't necessarily have to extract all of the data, but you have to extract most of it. You get to choose how much of it you want to extract. But the top part, this is necessary. You have to have the age, the gender ratio, the race, ethnicities, body weight, BMIs, and the comorbidities at baseline level. So that is extremely important. And then also the baselines that are pertinent to your topic, because we're talking about non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. We need to know what the condition of the patients was at the beginning of the study, so that we can compare it to what the drug did for them. If it showed any improvement, if the patient showed any improvement, or if they showed any adverse effects, we have to know the baseline to compare it to the final results, right? So I prefer to extract data for all of them, for all of the out for all of the baselines that the study is reporting. I extract all of them. So that was the first table. The second table that we have is this one, which is the endpoints. Some studies report have multiple tables, so there could be 2 or 3 more tables before you get to the table with the endpoints. So you have to make sure you look through those tables to see what they're reporting. But generally, you need to know, you need to extract the baseline and then the data. So the data is this: the endpoints, the outcomes, the results. So they're reporting the endpoints as the primary endpoints and then the other endpoints. So this is the table that we need, and also this one, which is table 3. Again, these are the key and secondary endpoints. And as I said, this study is basically the topic of this study. The objective of this study is to see the safety and efficacy. So for the safety, you obviously look through the adverse effects. So they also report the adverse effects and the safety summary in table 4. So these 3 tables, tables 2, 3, and 4, are for the data sheet. We're going to extract data from these tables and put it in the data sheet. And from table 1, the data that we extract from there, we're going to add it to the baseline sheet. Is this clear? This is pretty self-explanatory, right? Are there any questions so far? Am I going too quick? Please let me know if Azade asked, what is NCT number? NCT number is when you're conducting an observational study or a randomized controlled trial, or any kind of study, to be honest, you have to get it registered. You can't just go ahead and like get started. You have to get it registered first. And when you get it registered on the national registry, you get a number. It's kind of like a registration number. It's what your study is going to be identified by. So when people get their trials registered on the clinicaltrials.gov website, they get the registration number that they get is called the NCT number, because it starts with NCT and then whatever number, NCT 045, and so on and so forth. Does anyone have any questions so far? Is everything clear?
So, doc, basically for data extraction, yeah, data for data extraction, we will follow this table. So, will this table be available in all studies or all papers?
Yes, all of them. You'll
Okay.
have to read through the text as well. We've just discussed the table so far. This is how they report the outcomes in the table, but rare, not really, but less often than never. You will get the outcomes that will not be on in the table, but you'll have to read through the text and then you find out, oh, they've reported this additional outcome in the text, but not in the table. So to make sure you're not missing any of the outcomes, you have to also read through the endpoints to see and the results to see if you're missing anything. So now that we've looked at the table, now we can look at the endpoints to see if there's anything missing in the tables, right? So the two primary endpoints at week 52 were NASH resolution and with no worsening of fibrosis and an improvement in fibrosis by at least one stage, which we see over here in table 2,
Okay.
they have reported. So NASH resolution with no worsening fibrosis and then fibrosis improvement by at least 1 point. And then the other outcomes that they're reporting are uh, the key secondary because endpoints are either primary, which is the primary objective of your study, and then the secondary endpoints, and then adverse effects as well. So three things that you to make sure you're extracting: the primary endpoints, the secondary endpoints, and the adverse endpoints. Some studies will not categorize their outcomes into these three categories. They'll just report the outcomes as is. So they'll just say we reported outcome, our endpoints were this. They won't say if it was primary or secondary. And by the way, we can categorize our outcomes and endpoints to our liking. So for example, they're telling us that their primary endpoint was NASH resolution, and for example, improvement in fibrosis by at least one stage. And then the secondary endpoints that they're saying is the improvement in LDL cholesterol level at week 24. Now, improvement in LDL cholesterol at week 24 is a secondary outcome for them, right? But I could choose to make this the primary endpoint for my meta-analysis. So you can choose what endpoints you want to uh, to keep as your primary endpoint in your meta-analysis and which ones you want to keep as your secondary endpoint. It doesn't necessarily have to align with the categorization that's being used in your observational study or your RCT. Um,
Yes. Okay.
the secondary key Okay. The secondary endpoints were percent changes from baseline in the LDL at week 24. Safety endpoints included adverse effects, biochemical assessments, clinical assessments, and selected serious effects included deaths, cardiovascular events, and potential drug-induced liver injury. Uh, were adjudicated by independent external event adjudication committees whose members were aware of the trial group assignments. A complete list of primary and secondary endpoints is provided in table S1. Now, the tables that we looked at were tables 1, 2, 3, 4. There was an S in them, right? Table S1 refers to the supplementary table. So there's, with most studies, 90% of the studies you're going to come across, they will have a supplementary information with them. So you have to look through the supplementary information as well. When you read through the text, you will find out if there's anything in supplementary text that is not maybe in the main text. So this is the main text, and the supplementary information will be an other file that you submit with your study with the supplementary information. So they're telling us that they have reported the endpoints as a complete list in the table in the supplementary information. So we have to also look to the supplementary information. But it's the exact same as it is in the main text, so we're not going to do that today. So the table will be exactly like this, right? So we're just going to extract data from here because I'm just showing you
Yes.
how to extract data. We don't want to waste a lot of time on this. It's fairly simple. It's fairly straightforward. So this was one study, this is the other study, and this is the third study. So what's amazing about the selection of the studies that I have here is that they're all by the same author. So I know that most of the outcomes in one study are going to be reported in the other two studies as well because it's the same person. He's going to be thinking about the same stuff, right? So the only thing different might be the dosage or maybe some of the primary endpoints. So this is now we're looking through at the second study, the first table. Are there any questions? Okay.
So,
So the
doctor,
first
for
table
meta
is the
analysis,
demographics and baseline.
Yeah, doctor. Yeah, so for meta-analysis, you said that since all these three articles are from the same author, can we include them in the meta-analysis, or there can be bias in doing that?
There won't be any bias because that is an excellent question which I answered just a few minutes ago, but I'll repeat. Basically, when this we have the same author, the bias that could have been introduced was for the for the person, for the author to have used the same patient population for all three studies. That would have been a major bias. But we compared the NCT numbers to see if the patient population was the same, and they weren't the same. There were other studies with the same NCT number, which I did not include for the sake of skipping through the bias and everything. So we have to make sure that all of the studies that we're including up in our meta-analysis have different NCT numbers. And I did make sure of that. Is that clear?
Okay, okay. Yes, I got it. So if NCT number is different, then we can include that paper in our
Yes.
study.
And it's not always going to be NCT number. Some NCT number is when the trial or the study is registered in the clinicaltrials.gov registry, which is the registry for the US. For China, there's a different registry, for, and I think it starts the numbers, the registration numbers there start with CID or something. So that depends. Obviously, you'll be able to see what the registration number is. They mention it in the registry. So you just have to make sure that the registration number for all studies are different. Okay, so
Okay,
this is
okay,
the second study. The first table shows us the baseline characteristics. In most of the cases, you'll see that the first table is the baseline, are going to be the baseline characteristics. Um, this is the first table. Then the second table is the safety summary, which is one of, because I did say that the topic is the objective was to look at the safety and efficacy. So these are the safety outcomes. So this is one of the tables for the outcomes, and then this reports the key secondary endpoints. Okay, so these are the secondary endpoints. This is a continuation of table 3. So these are the outcomes that we have. So now we have all of these outcomes. Now we're going to read through the endpoints to see if we're missing anything. But these are a lot, so we'll just read through them very, very quickly. The primary endpoint incidence of treatment related adverse events. What is this? Hold on. Treatment emergent adverse effects. Okay. So the primary outcome was treatment emergent adverse effects, which we saw in table 1. And then the majority of TE is now they're just telling us about the results that they had. And then the key secondary endpoints were achieved for both TB, 100 mg, blah, 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 blah. So reductions in atherogenic lipid levels from baseline compared to placebo treatment, table 2A and 3, figure 2A and table 3, and then additional lipid endpoints. These are the secondary endpoints. So these two are the secondary endpoints, and then the same in the third one. So now we know how to look through the studies for the data. Now we're going to start extracting the data, right? I'm going to extract it for one of the studies, and then you're going to practice the same, okay? So we have now we move on to our Excel sheet. This is our data book, and this is our baseline book. Let's just delete this. Okay, so these are the two that you need. For the baselines, this is what it's going to look like. Hold on. So far, do we have any questions? And please let me know if I'm going too fast. I'll slow down. Um,
So, Doc, what do you mean by the baseline? I think like the initial data or the result. Or what do you mean by the baseline?
yes, basically, the information that we can extract from the baseline table is basically all of the characteristics of the patient and the about the study at the beginning of the study. Before you went ahead and started the intervention and placebo treatment, when you got the patients enrolled into your study, you have to know what their initial investigations were, what their initial state was, right? So that you can compare it to the final. Because if you're comparing two things, you need to have the data for that outcome at two different points in time, before the intervention and after the intervention, right? So baseline is that data before you started the intervention or the placebo, right?
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Okay. Now for the baselines, you have to extract everything obviously that the study is reporting. But for the first column is obviously going to be the author and the year of the study. So you could either use the same column for them, or you could use different columns for them. I'm going to use different columns, right? So the first one is going to be the author name or the study name. The next one is going to be the year that the study was conducted in. Then you're just going to hold on. You can also choose to have serial number uh, before author name, right? So I could also use serial number, right? You don't necessarily have to do this, but I prefer to do it. Okay, so we have three studies obviously. So we're going to write 1, 2, and 3, and then we're going to write the author names, which is S.A. Harrison. This is the author for all three studies, okay? Which is rarely ever the case. So I can show you. The study was reported by S.A. Harrison. The way you name a study is basically, this is the title of the study, right? But when you're naming studies in RevMan and on your sheets and in your sheets, you're going to use the name of the first author, right? So S.A. Harrison, and then the year that the study was published, which for in this case is 2024. And then for this one as well, it's S.A. Harrison, Stephen A. Harrison. You just write S.A. Harrison, and then the year that the study was published or conducted, which is 2023. And then for this one as well, Stephen A. Harrison, and then this one was conducted in 2019. Not conducted, published in 2019. So we're going to do that. Now you're going to write the years. You can do this randomly as well. You can go 2023, 2019, 2024, but I prefer to do it like this. And it's preferable to do it like this. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the important things. We're going to look at the table and you're going to extract data that the table has given. The baseline data. So for this one, the first thing that they're reporting is the age, the baseline age. So we're going to do that. Age in years. You have to write what the unit is. This is obviously going to be in years. But for example, if they're reporting, for example, uh, height or weight, you have to report what the unit that they measure it in is. And then the race or ethnicity, and then Hispanic or Latino ethnic group, so on and so forth. I'm just going to copy paste now. So you're going to make all these columns, and then you're going to extract data for the data that's being reported in the study, and you're going to paste it onto this sheet. Is this clear? This is very simple. This is very straightforward. So the race or ethnic group, they're reporting multiple races, right? So what we can do over here is we can add a column here, a row here. And then we can merge all of these cells. and then we can report the data for the subgroups that they're reporting. So white, black, Asian, and other. That's what we're going to do. White, black, Asian, and then others. So I just basically I merge this the cell on top and then multiple subgroups under that. Okay, and then the next one is Hispanic and Latino. They're reporting this separately because there's a database called the CDC Wonder database. It This is just the way they report it. For Hispanics, it's the data is given it separately. You can also choose to do it this way, that you can include the data under the ethnicity group, which is probably better in the long run. Let's just do that. This way, you're just going to copy everything from here, every single baseline that they're reporting. We're going to copy this from here, and then we're going to paste it onto here, and then we're also going to copy and paste the data. So, for example, this for the resmetirom group, and now you're going to make two subgroups, right? So for each study, we need I'm adding a column to the left of this. This is let me shift this over here. Why am I adding a column? Because they're reporting the baselines for the two groups separately, which in most of the cases that is true. They're going to report the data, the baseline table data, as well as the outcome data separately for each group, so that you can compare so that you can compare it to the data at the end of the study. So, for example, if this person's BMI at the start of the study was 35.5, they can compare it to the average BMI of the patients in the resmetirom 80 mg group at the end of the study. So this is a 3-arm study, as you can see, because there's 3 different groups: resmetirom 80 mg, resmetirom 100 mg, and placebo group. So there's 3 different groups. So this is called a 3-arm study. So we're going to introduce 3 different rows so that we can extract the data for all 3 of them. And then you can just name this group or whatever you want. So this is going to be resmetirom 80 mg. This is going to be resmetirom 100 mg. And this is going to be the placebo. And then we're just going to extract the data for each one. So the age in years for the resmetirom 80 mg group at the baseline is this. So we're going to copy this, paste it on here, and then the same way for every single baseline characteristic. Is this clear so far? Do we have any questions? Was I going too fast?
No, you're good, doctor.
So if I stop here for the baseline, will you be able to do this? It's the same way for all of the studies. Let's just extract a little bit more. So you're going to extract this for the 100 mg. And then for the placebo group. So this is one way to do it. The for you to put the serial number, author name, year, and the group this way. The other way to do it would have been for you to report all of the variables at the baseline in the vertical form, so like in columns, in different columns, in different rows, sorry, and then to use 3 different columns for each of the studies. So this way. You can choose to do either one, whichever suits you best.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Yes.
you said that we put the outcome in the, in another sheet, in data sheet,
Yes.
but here
These
we
are the
put them in the
baseline.
baseline sheet.
These
Oh,
are the
yeah,
baselines.
yes. Okay, I got it. Yeah.
So this is demographic and clinical characteristics of the patients at baseline. When we report the outcomes for at the endpoints, we're going to use this table. This says
Yes, thank you. I
biopsy
got it.
endpoints, and then table 3 is for the second year. Okay. So the other way to do it is this way, where you could put all of the variables at the baseline in different rows, and then you could use different columns for each of the studies. So Harrison et al. One group for placebo, the other for Harrison. Harrison et al. One row for placebo, and the one column for placebo, and the other for resmetirom, and the same for the third study. You could choose to do either. This one looked better for this study because we had 3 different dosage forms for one of the studies. So we chose to do it like this, but you can also do it like that, this way. Whatever suits you best. There's no compulsion for you to use one way or the other. There's no hard and fast rule. You could use whatever suits you best. Is this clear? Do I need to continue with this? Do you need to extract a little bit more data, or are you guys comfortable with doing this on your own?
Can you show a few other columns, like
Sure.
apart from race and ethnicity?
This was just for the year, right? So let's also extract data for other endpoints like Hispanic or Latino. Or rather, let's do body weight. The only reason I did this was so that I was able to differentiate between the headings and the other bars, the data.
Excuse me, we should use Excel just, or we can use other software to extract data because we have MacBook and we
For
should
data extraction,
purchase
for the
the
data,
Excel. Yeah.
no, for the data extraction, you have to use Excel, or you could use Google Sheets, which is free. But for baseline, you're extracting it over here, but in the end, you're going to have to transfer this to Word because your final manuscript is going to be on Microsoft Word. So you're going to copy this and you're going to put it in table form over there. So you can also directly do this on Word, which is probably better in the long run because it's going to save you time. But this is how I was taught to do it, to first do it on Excel and then on Word, so that I can compare very easily. And then once you get comfortable with meta-analysis and extracting data and extracting baseline demographics, you can directly use Word. I can also, hold on, let me just also demonstrate
Okay.
on Word. Let's just
Okay.
complete Excel first and then we can do Word as well. This is for the resmetirom 80 mg group, and then resmetirom 100 mg group is body weight. Basic copy paste jobs. So this is for one study, right? So for the other study, we're going to do the same. This is one study done. I'm not going to extract all of the baselines because that's just going to end up taking a lot of time. For the other study, you do the same. You make 2 groups, one for imagepan, one for placebo. This is the second study. These are the baselines and demographics, right? So our first variable for the demographics was age. So we're going to take age. This again has This is also a 3-arm study. This is actually 4-arm because once daily and then twice daily, and then 100 mgs once daily, 100 mgs twice daily, and then 80 mgs twice daily, and then placebo twice daily. So for this one, we have to have 4 different rows. So I just made 2, but you have to have 4. So we're going to add 2 more. You just have to extract the data the exact same way as the study is reporting it. So I copied the data for 100 mg once daily from this column, and then I pasted it in this row, in this column, okay? And then I extracted data for 100 mg twice daily, data for the age. And this is the age column, and this is 100 mg twice daily row, and then I pasted it over here. I'm going to do the same for every single variable and every single treatment arm. Is this clear? Do I need to do more, extract more baseline data?
I think it's okay.
Now I'm going to teach you to do the same on Word, which is probably more time efficient because in the end, you're going to have to copy this data onto Word for the baseline table only, not for the data extraction, because the data extraction isn't going to be submitted along with your manuscript, but the baseline data is going to be submitted. So you have to make a table on Word. Or rather, let me just show you a table that I've already made. This is how you extract data directly onto Word. We just made a table directly on Word and extracted the data the exact same way. So the author, the author name and the year, and then the type of study. And this is very important. I skipped this, but this is very, very important. You need to also make a column. The second column is always going to be the type of study. So all of these studies are randomized control trials, but all of them are different in different phases because there's different phases for randomized control trials, right? So there's phase 1A, 1B, 2, 3, 4. So there's different phases. This is a phase 3 randomized control trial, right? So we're going to write phase 3 randomized control trial. They also specify exactly what kind of study it was in the method section. So this is where this says that we are conducting this phase 3 double-blind randomized placebo control trial. So we're going to copy this part and paste it as it is in our baseline table. This is a different study. This is for this. I use different studies for this one because this was an entirely different topic, but this is the way you do it. And then there's the sample size is very important. I was going to teach you guys this at the end of this, but it's better for you when you're extracting it on Word. to have a column for the type of study first, and then also the number of patients in each group. So, for example, we have resmetirom and placebo, right? So we're going to have different columns for this. So resmetirom 100 mg, resmetirom 80 mg, and then one column, one column for placebo. And then we're going to have the total number of patients in that group. How will we know the number of patients in each group? When we look at the baseline table, they're going to report the total number of patients in each group. So this is the baseline table, and it says n equals to 322. N is the sample size. So there were 322 patients in this group, in the resmetirom 80 mg group. There were 323 people in the resmetirom 100 mg group, and then there were 321 people in the placebo group. So we're going to have a column for the name of the first author, and then the year of the that the study was published. The second column is going to be the type of study. The third column is going to be the number of patients in each group. And then we start extracting data for the different baselines. So median age, the male to female ratio, or in this case, we're not being given the male to female ratio. We're just being given the total number of males, the percentage males out of all the total. So out of the 322 patients, 140 were males. So you just have to extract it as it is. You don't have to subtract 140 from 322 to reduce that there were whatever number of female patients, because there could also be other genders, right? So we're not going to assume anything. We're going to report data as it is being reported. The rest is the same. The rest is just us extracting data as it is being reported in the studies. Is this clear?
Yes.
Okay. Now we move on to the main part, which is data. For data, it's the exact same way. We just extract data. For data, obviously, when we're extracting data, we don't have to mention this stuff. We don't have to mention the type of study, and we don't have to mention uh, we don't have to mention the type of study. We do have to mention the number of patients, but in a different way. Let me show you. This again you can do in one of two ways. You can either use the study names in the vertical way, or you can use it in the horizontal, and then you can choose the baseline, so the variables and the outcomes in the other one. So basically, you could either use this format where the author name is in the vertical form, and then the different outcomes for the data are in the horizontal form, or you could use this way, where the studies are in the horizontal manner and then the outcomes are in the vertical manner. Ignore all the different colors. This was us trying to figure out what outcomes we're going to analyze and which ones we weren't going to analyze. You need to have a minimum of 2 studies reporting the same outcomes for you to be able to analyze it. I'll repeat that. This is important stuff. You need to have at least 2 studies reporting data for that outcome for you to analyze the outcome. So let's extract data, and then we can move on to analysis, which is the main part. So these are our endpoints, right? So we're going to look at our data sheet. The first one is going to be serial number, obviously. One thing that I need you to notice is in the baseline sheet, we had an entirely different section dedicated to the number of patients in each group, right? This time we won't have an entire section. We're just going to have to report it under the name of the study. So like this. Harrison et al. And placebo, and then we're going to write the number of patients in each group. My laptop is acting up. Let me just. So, for example, we're going to this column is going to be for the outcomes. For the author and the year. So for each one, we're going to make the number of rows that is equivalent to the number of arms, study arms, right? Treatment arms. So this is the study from 2024, I think. Yes, this is a 2024 study, right? So when we look at the table that is reporting the outcomes, we see that they have three different treatment arms. One treatment arm is resmetirom 80 mg, the other is resmetirom 100 mg, and the third one is the placebo treatment arm, right? So we're going to have three different rows for each one. Now, this is where it gets a little bit different from the baseline table, because we're going to write the sample size right next to this. So we're going to write n equals to, and then the number of patients in each treatment arm. So there's 316 patients in the resmetirom 80 mg group. And then there's 321 patients in the resmetirom 100 mg group. And then in the placebo group, we have 318 patients. We're going to write n equals to 318. You need to write the sample size in each group, because this is very important when you're going to be analyzing the data. Now you're just going to extract data because you already know what the endpoints are, right? So the first endpoint is NASH resolution with no worsening of fibrosis. Now since this is the same author, he's going to be reporting the outcome in the exact same way, in the exact same wording. So it's going to be the exact same wording in the other two studies as well. Not necessarily, but mostly it's that this is what the case is. But if there was some other author also conducting the same kind of study, which is the efficacy and safety of resmetirom in patients with NASH, he might have used different words for this outcome. He could have used NASH resolution with no worsening of fibrosis, improvement in NASH without worsening of fibrosis. So you need to read the endpoint section in the methodology, so that you know what the outcome is talking about, so that you can decipher whether it's the same outcome or not. So not all studies are you going to use the exact same wordings for the outcome. You have to interpret it yourself to see if it's the same outcome. It's normally very, very simple. They mostly use the same wordings, but sometimes they don't. So in those cases, you have to read through the outcomes. So the first outcome that they're reporting is NASH resolution without worsening of fibrosis. Please ignore the spellings. I don't know what's going on with me today. Okay, now just extract the data for each group. So in the resmetirom 80 mg group, it's 25.9. This is percentage with response, right? So this is in percentage. So 25.9% of the people in this group showed NASH resolution with no worsening of fibrosis. This is where the types of outcome comes in. So we studied the types of outcomes on day one, and we said it's different types of outcomes. So there's let's review that real quickly so that we can figure out what kind of outcome this is. There were categorical outcomes and then continuous outcomes. Categorical outcomes were again categorized into two different subgroups, which was dichotomous which are outcomes with two categories. So yes, no, alive, dead, pass, fail, and non-dichotomous, which have more than two categories, which is, for example, blood type and hair color. And the continuous outcomes were numerical variables with decimals, for example, height, weight, BP, etc. So we're looking at the number of patients who did whose NASH situation it resolved a little bit with no worsening of fibrosis. What kind of outcome do you think this is? Is this a continuous outcome, or is this a nominal outcome?
Continuous.
Sorry.
Is it continuous?
Yes. Good. No, this is
Okay.
not. Sorry, this is not continuous. This is categorical outcome, because this is the number of patients whose NASH resolved. So numerical continuous outcome would have been height or BP. For example, if I said the percentage by which it resolved, so or improved. For example, someone's fibrosis situation could have resolved by like 15% or 20%, or their BP could have improved by uh, 2 millimeter Hg, 3 millimeter Hg, 4 millimeter Hg on average. But this is basically the percentage of patients who said that they whose reports demonstrated that their NASH situation, their liver health had improved. So this is the number of patients.
Okay. So it's basically yes or no, either improved or
Yes.
no, right?
So did they see NASH resolution with no worsening of fibrosis in the lab results of this patient? Yes or no? So for 25% of the 25.9% of the patients, the answer was yes. If you're
Yes.
ever
Yes.
confused, you can read through the endpoints to see what it is. They're not going to blatantly mention if it's a continuous outcome or not, but you'll be able to understand what the outcome is about, which is going to make it easier for you to understand what kind of outcome it is.
Mhm.
So NASH resolution without worsening of fibrosis, and then for the ATMG group, it's 25.9%. And you have to write if it's in percentage or whatever unit it's in, because once you're entering the data into RevMan, you're going to need to know what unit it is. And then fibrosis improvement by at least one stage with no worsening of any FLD activity score. This is our next outcome. So for this outcome, we're going to extract the data for all three treatment groups. So NASH resolution without worsening of fibrosis in the resmetirom 80 mg group was 25.9. In the resmetirom 100 mg group, it was 29.9. And in the placebo group, it was 9.7. The next outcome is fibrosis improvement by one or more stages with no worsening of NAFLD activity score. At this point, you probably don't understand what the outcomes are. You would have to read through the studies. So you don't need to know, you just need to know how to extract the data. When you start doing your own meta-analysis, when you're working on your own project, when you'll obviously read through the studies and you'll understand the outcomes in your studies and trials. So the data for the second outcome, which is fibrosis improvement by more than one or more stages with no worsening of NAFLD score for the resmetirom 80 mg group is 24.2%. So basically 24.2% of your patients saw an improvement in their fibrosis situation by 1% or greater. Okay, these are the primary endpoints done. The other endpoints, you just copy the endpoint and you extract the data for it. So the first one is always easy. You don't need to know anything. You just need to extract the data. And then for the subsequent trials, you're going to have to look through the studies to see if this outcome is being reported by the next study. So for this study, let's just very quickly extract this outcome, and then we're going to look at the other studies. So these are just 3 outcomes. I'm not extracting all of the outcomes. Next, let's do a little bit of the secondary endpoints, which are these. So let's do LDL cholesterol level at week 24. So this is a week-based, a time-based outcome list of outcomes. So you need to know when the outcome is being extracted, when the data for the outcome. So this one was measured at week 24. So you need to know this because other studies might have measured the same lab, that is LDL cholesterol level, at week 56, or this one could have done it at week 36. So you can't pool these 3 together because obviously one person has been taking a drug for 24 weeks, the other one has been taking it for 56 weeks, the other one has been taking it for longer than that, for a year, for example. Obviously, there's going to be different levels of improvement in all 3 patients. So you need to know what the follow-up time for each outcome is. They're going to mention it over here. Now we can see that the first study reported the outcomes in the form of percentages, right? Which is very simple to understand. This study reports the outcomes as the least square mean percent change from baseline. So this is the percent change from baseline, the least square mean percent change from baseline. So you need to mention this, the type of outcome, for example, we wrote percentage over here so that the person who's analyzing that data knows that this was percentage. Now we need to write LSM change from baseline over here so that the person analyzing that data knows that this is a different kind of way to report the outcomes and data compared to the other ones. And I'm going to explain what this is in a bit. Right now, I'm just extracting the data. One secondary outcome, and then now let's just extract data for the adverse effects, and then we can move on. So for this, the event is more than one or more adverse events, and then they've divided into grades. Let's see if they've done that for the other studies. They have. So one or more treatment emergent adverse effects. Grade 1 is mild, grade 2 is moderate, and grade 3 severe. So we can extract this data. We're going to merge 3 cells for this. Treatment emergent adverse effects, and then grade 1, grade 2, and then grade 3. And then we're going to, and this is also going to be in percentage or N, just the number of patients. So this is raw data. So the number of patients in percentage who experience mild adverse, the total number of patients who experience any kind of adverse effects, one or more kind of adverse effects, was 296 in total. You can extract that as it is, and then you can also extract the data in different categories. So for a total of 296 patients, 73 of them experience grade 1 or mild adverse effects, 180 of them experience moderate or grade 2 adverse effects, and 43 of them experience severe or a grade 3 adverse effects. I'm making another column for total, which is the total number of patients who experience any kind of adverse effects. So the 296 patients, which is 91.9% of the patients in the resmetirom 80 mg group, experience adverse effects. 73% of them, which is 22.7%, experience grade 1 adverse effects. 180 of them, which is 55.9% of them, experience moderate adverse effects. So within the same row, which is the resmetirom ATMG group, because this is the data for the resmetirom ATMG group, right? The resmetirom ATMG group, grade 2 adverse effects, 180 patients. And then how many of the people in this same treatment arm experienced grade 3 side effects? 43, which is 13.4%. And then we're going to extract the data the same way for the other two treatment arms. Sorry, this was the total number of patients who had experienced any kind of adverse effects. And then 66 of them had experienced grade 1 side effects or adverse effects. 183 of them experienced grade 2 adverse effects. And then 169 of them experienced, 47 of them experienced grade 3 side effects, which is in the resmetirom 100 mg. Is this clear? This is very confusing, I know, but we're just extracting data as it is being reported in the study. I've selected what kind of data I'm trying to extract for the sake of saving time, but you have to extract every single outcome from every single study. So now we're done with one study. Let's move on to the other study and see if these exact outcomes are being reported by the next study. So the first outcome is NASH resolution without worsening of fibrosis, right? Let's look through the outcomes. Make sure you're not looking in the baseline table. You won't find it there. How did they... Now they're not reporting NASH resolution without fibrosis as it is. I looked through the tables and they're not reporting it as it is. So there has to be something else. I have to look through the text to see what the definition of this outcome was. What did they consider as an improvement in NASH without worsening of fibrosis, and then see if that definition fits any of the outcomes in this study. These are the results, right? These are just the demographic and clinical characteristics that they're explaining. Efficacy. Okay. So NASH resolution with no worsening of fibrosis was achieved in significantly more patients who received resmetirom. An improvement in fibrosis by at least one stage. They're not explaining what this is here, so they're probably explaining it in the methodology. You'll have to read through the studies. Hold on, let me get them. Okay, this is they're explaining what it is over here. Endpoints. The two primary endpoints at week 52 were NASH resolution with no worsening of fibrosis, which they've defined as an achievement of a hepatocellular ballooning score of 0, a lobular inflammation score of 0 or 1, and a reduction in the NAFLD activity score by greater than by 2 points or greater. So these are three things that they have. This is a checklist of three things that have to be confirmed and positive for a person to be considered to have experienced NASH resolution with no worsening of fibrosis. So we're going to look through this sheet and see if they're reporting anything of the sort.
Buka tataki.
Someone's mic is turned on. They're not reporting this outcome in this study. This is going to happen. Some of the outcomes are not going to be reported in all of the studies. So this is why I was saying you have to have the same outcome being reported by at least 2 studies for you to be able to analyze that study. This is our 3rd study. Let's hope this one does report the outcome. This is fat reduction. What is this? This is change in MRI proton density. This is LDL cholesterol, liver enzymes. This is also not reporting the same outcome. So let's move on to the other outcome. So for example, the study is not reporting the, I don't make groups for this. How many treatment arms do we have for this? One is placebo and the other is resmetirom. And how many patients do we have in each group? Because we need to make columns for that, right? So we're going to do that. We have 2 groups, 2 treatment arms. One is resmetirom and the other is placebo. We need to know what mg of resmetirom it is, right? So we're going to have to read through the study. I think it's 80 mg. Yes, resmetirom 80 mg or placebo. So the 2 groups are resmetirom 80 mg or placebo. So we make those 2 column rows. So the total number of patients in the resmetirom 80 mg group is 84 and 41 patients in the placebo group. So 84 in this group and then 41 in this group. Now, since this study is not reporting data for this outcome, we're just going to put NA over here. And we'll move on to the next outcome, which is fibrosis improvement by 1 stage or greater with no resolution of any FLD score. This is just the MRI proton density. This is fat reduction. This is the lipid cholesterol change from baseline and other biomarkers. So they're not reporting the fibrosis, enhanced fibrosis they're reporting, but they're not reporting the resolution and fibrosis. So the study is not reporting that outcome. Let's look at this one. CFB means change from baseline. So this one is also not reporting that outcome. So again, we have an outcome which is only being reported by 1 study. So we're going to write NA for this one as well. Let's just skip to the LDL cholesterol level at week 24 because I'm sure this one reports that. So this is a safety summary. They are reporting the treatment at emergent adverse effects. So in the resmetirom, they have 3 groups. This is the second study. This is not the first study. The first study we've already extracted data for. So one of the outcomes here that we've reported is the treatment at emergent adverse effects, grade 1, 2, 3, and the total number of patients who suffered from treatment emergent adverse effects. So for this study, we have three different treatment arms: resmetirom 100 mg, 100 mg, and 80 mg, and then placebo. 100 mg once daily, twice daily, and then 80 mg twice daily, and then placebo. So for the third study, we didn't have any. We still haven't started on this one because the study was not reporting either of these outcomes. So we've just skipped to the third outcome. 4 treatment arms, we need 4 rows. They're reporting the treatment emergent adverse effects, right? So we are going to extract data for that. So the number of patients in the resmetirom 100 mg once daily group, 140, we have a total of 171 patients in this group, 324 in this, 327 in this, and 318 in this. So let's write that down. One 71 in this group. Is it 324 in this group? Oops, sorry. And then there is 327 and then 380. So what we've done so far is we just made this sheet. In the first column, we had the serial number. Then in the second one, we had the author and the year that the study was published. In the third one, we had the treatment arms and the basically the groups, or you can write treatment arms. And then we started extracting all of the outcomes. So for the first study, we extracted every single outcome. I didn't extract every single outcome to save time, but you will have to extract every single outcome in this first study, every single outcome in this text, and every single outcome in this table. So once you have extracted all of these, and all of these, the safety outcomes as well, you're going to have almost every single outcome on this list already, and you're going to have values for every single outcome from the first study. And then for the subsequent studies, for study number 2 and study number 3, you're just going to extract data for these outcomes. For example, for this outcome, I'll look through study number 2 and I'll see if it reports that outcome. If it reports that outcome, I'm just going to extract that data and enter it here. If it doesn't, I'll write NA. And the same for the third study. And then for the subsequent outcomes, we do the same. We look through the second and third studies and see if they're reporting that outcome or not. If they're reporting an additional, if I've looked through study number 2 and it's reporting all of the outcomes that study number 1 was reporting, but additional outcomes as well, towards the end of the list, I'll add those additional outcomes. And I'll write NA in front of the first study, because the first study is not reporting that outcome, but the second study is, and maybe the third and the fourth and subsequent studies will. So I have to extract every single output. And then when I've made the entire data sheet, I'm going to look through all of the studies. I'm going to look at the outcomes. I'm going to see how many outcomes are being reported by at least 3 studies. And I'm only going to analyze those outcomes. If an outcome is being analyzed by only 1 study or 2 studies, I cannot analyze that outcome on RevMan. Is that clear? Is this, are you guys understanding this? Is this confusing? Do you need to repeat something, anything?
Okay, doc. So I have a question. If like the defined end outcome, the defined out endpoints, so it's like NAS resolution without worsening of fibrosis. So say if in any one study it says that NAS resolution without worsening of fibrosis, but if in another study it just simply says that NAS resolution. So then how can we consider them as
Then these
same?
two are different outcomes. No, they're not the same. One is, they're two different things, right? One, they could be reporting for NASH resolution. They could be reporting the number of patients who had resolution with or without fibrosis, and the other one is only reporting the number of patients with NASH resolution with fibrosis. It's a different. It's a different inclusion criteria. So we cannot merge those two. We cannot pool those two. These are two different outcomes. You'll have to extract them separately as two different outcomes.
Okay, thanks, doc.
Do you guys want to practice extracting data first, or can we move on to analysis? This is basically all there is to analysis. You're just going to extract data for each of the outcomes. This is an outcome that I've extracted for only one study, right? Let's extract it for another one, and then we can move on to analysis. So for the baselines, there. So they did mention grade 1, 2, 3 in the first two studies for the treatment emergent adverse effects, right? But here they're just saying severe, moderate, and mild. If we look through the studies, and this is why I was telling you guys to look at the definition of each of the outcomes. For grade 1, it means mild, right? So mild over here in the third group is this one. So it's the same. This is the total number of patients who suffered from any kind of adverse effect. So we're going to report that. This is the study. And in the placebo group, 73 of them reported any kind of adverse effects. And then for the resmetirom groups, 40 of them suffered from mild adverse effects. So we're going to write that in the resmetirom group. And then in the placebo group, only 13 of them suffered from mild adverse effects. So we're going to write that. Sorry, these are mild, right? Mild is grade 1. Grade 3 is severe, and grade 2 is moderate. For the moderate one, 13 of them in the placebo group suffered from moderate adverse effects. So for grade 2, placebo. And then for the severe adverse effects, 2 of them in the placebo group suffered from severe adverse effects. So grade 3 placebo is this one. And then 6 of them in the resmetirom group suffered from severe adverse effects. This is how we extract data. For the LDL cholesterol level at week 24, let's see if this is reporting that. Oh, they are reporting NASH resolution without fibrosis worsening. So they have a total, in the placebo group, 6 of them had NASH resolution without worsening of fibrosis. So NASH resolution without worsening of fibrosis in the placebo group is 6. And then in the resmetirom group, it's 18. But notice how the total number of patients in the, hold on. Notice how here the total number of patients in the placebo group was 41 and the ones in the resmetirom group was 84. But over here, they're only for this particular outcome, the number of patients they examined for this outcome was 31 for the placebo group and then 73 for the resmetirom group. So for this outcome, even though the total number of patients in the placebo group was 41, only 31 of them were examined for NASH resolution. Maybe the other 10 patients didn't show up for the follow-up. Maybe they died. Maybe they just couldn't make it. They dropped out of the study for whatever reason. 10 of them were not examined for this outcome. So for 31 of them, six out of those 31 were examined for this outcome. So six of them out of the 31 patients in the placebo group had NASH resolution, showed NASH resolution without the worsening of fibrosis. So we have to mention this over here. So for the sample size of the study, placebo group was 41 and resmetirom was 84. But for this outcome, the N is 31. You have to mention this for the person who's doing the analysis. Otherwise, the results are all going to come out messy and incorrect. Is this clear? Is this clear? Does anyone have any questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
Uh,
So this is how you
the
extract
study,
data.
ma'am, the study we are looking is 2019. Are we entering it in 2023 study? I just have a question.
It's coming from very distorted. Can you write your question in the chat box?
Yes,
Please.
ma'am, I've just written.
Okay, I'll check it. This is my issue. This is my problem. I'm sorry. This was me. I'm just trying to demonstrate, right? So I want to make sure that you know how to extract data. This doesn't matter. When you're extracting data, you have to make sure that everything is the way it should be.
Sure, thank you.
So this is how you extract data. This is how you make the baseline. This is us done with the two basic things. Now we're going to move on to data analysis. I want you all to focus now. This is data extraction was still you can extract data. It's very easy. It's basic. Now we move on to the fun stuff. In the first class on day one, even now I reviewed the different ways that data is going to be and outcomes are going to be reported in studies. So we said that they could be reported as raw data or as effect sizes, and within effect sizes they could be reported as odds ratio, risk ratio, or hazard ratio, right? But some studies they're not going to be very clear about this, and they're not going to tell you that the data is in the form of odds ratio or hazard ratio or risk ratio. They're going to use certain words that you need to know. They could say that they use multivariable logistic regression, which this translates to odds ratio. If they're saying that they use multivariable logistic regression, you need to know that they mean that the outcomes are being reported as odds ratio. If they say that they used Cox proportional hazards model, this means that the outcome is being reported as a hazard ratio. And then if they use Poisson regression or binomial model, this means that they're reporting the outcomes as risk ratio. And then for fine gray multivariable time to event model, it means they're reporting data as sub-distribution hazard ratio. Now, SHR is not the same as HR, but it can be analyzed as such. It's slightly different because they answer different questions. So when they're using Cox HR, which over here we said Cox proportional hazard model reports hazard ratio, while fine gray multivariable model reports SHR, sub-distributed HR. These two hazard ratios answer different questions. For Cox AR, it answers the question, what is the instantaneous risk, assuming that there are no competing events. So for at that time, at that very minute, not that very minute, but at that time, at that point in time, what is the risk? And then sub-distributed hazard is the cumulative incidents at maybe different times, or maybe there's different competing events. So that this is the difference. You don't exactly need to know this, but for example, if there's an outcome and one of the studies is reporting that this outcome, for example, let's say it's ABC, right? So one of the studies is reporting the results for ABC outcome in the form of hazard ratio, and then two other studies are reporting it in the form of sub-distribution hazard, and they're saying that they have used the fine gray multivariable time to event model. So now we know that study number 2 and 3 are reporting the outcome for ABC, they're reporting the results in the form of sub-distribution hazard ratio, and the first one is reporting it as hazard ratio. Can we pool these two as the same? Can we use the hazards ratio option in RevMan? The answer is yes, we can. So we're going to, we can do that, but it's not going to be ideal because there is a difference in the kind of questions they're answering. So what's preferred is for us to make two different subgroups. So we'll make one subgroup for the studies that are reporting the data for that outcome as hazards ratio, and then we're going to make another subgroup for the data studies that are reporting the outcome, the data for the outcome ABC as SHR. Now I'm going to demonstrate this in a bit. Let's move on to forest plots. Now we're starting with the analysis portion. I'm going to reboot my RevMan. While I demonstrate. Okay. On day one, we talked about forest plot, and we said there's the most important figure in our meta-analysis. The reason we do a meta-analysis is so that we have forest plots, which are statistical proof of what we're deducing from that meta-analysis, right? Let's go over the forest plot once again. And the 95% confidence intervals of each study and the pool effect. And each outcome has a different forest plot. So, for example, we were extracting data, right? And we said that we're extracting data for different outcomes. So, this is one outcome: NASH resolution without worsening of fibrosis. Fibrosis improvement is another outcome. LDL cholesterol is another outcome. This is another outcome. Treatment emergent adverse effects are another outcome. So, there's for each of these outcomes, there will be one forest plot for this outcome. There will be an other different forest plot for this outcome. There will be a separate forest plot for this outcome. Within the forest plot for this outcome, for example, we have all three studies. For example, let's suppose this outcome is being reported by all three studies, right? Let's just copy this. This is not the case. All three studies were not reporting this outcome, but just assume that they are. So we're going to make one forest plot for this outcome. Within the forest plot, when we're trying to make the forest plot, RevMan is going to ask for data that it's going to use to make that forest plot. So we're going to add the data for this study, which is this data, right? And then for this study, and then for this study, we'll enter this data. For this study, we'll enter this data. And it's going to take all of this data for this outcome, NASH resolution, and it's going to present this data to us in the form of a forest plot. So this is what a forest plot is, right? So now how do we read a forest plot? This is a forest plot. So basically, when we extracted data, the data was not in the forms of effect measure. The data was in the form of percentage, which is raw data. So the software is going to convert it into effect size. When we enter the data, the software itself is going to convert it into effect sizes. And then for some studies, they are going to report effect sizes directly, so the software won't have to convert them. We're already giving it the data in the form of effect sizes. The model, we can choose the model. As I said before, we prefer to use random effects model, but we can use either, except when there is significant heterogeneity. I'll explain what heterogeneity is in a bit, maybe in tomorrow's class. So if there's a lot of heterogeneity, more than 90% or more than 60%, we use the random effects model. We're required to use the random effects model, but if there isn't much heterogeneity, we can use either fixed effects model or random effects model according to our preference. So we have the number of these different lines with the boxes in them. There's one line for each study. So this forest plot was made for an outcome which was being reported by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different studies. And the diamond is the overall effect, the overall result basically of that outcome. So for example, we entered data from 8 different studies for one outcome, and we asked the software to make us a forest plot for it, so that we can explain what the effect of the intervention was on that outcome. So this diamond is going to show us what the effect was. For example, for whatever the intervention is in this group, the two outcomes could be cognitive decline or no cognitive decline. So the diamond is on the side of the cognitive decline. So whatever the intervention was, it led to an overall cognitive decline. And the width is the 95% confidence interval, which I explained in the first class, is um, how confident we are that the true value lies within 90. There's a 95% chance that the true value lies within this range, within the 95% confidence interval range. And where this lies on the on the x-axis is the odds ratio, overall odds ratio, because we used odds ratio here. The effect size we used was odds ratio, but we prefer to use risk ratio. So the box is the odds ratio and the line is the 95% confidence interval for each study. And when we're talking about the overall 95% confidence interval and the overall odds ratio, it's giving in the form of a diamond. So this is what a forest plot is. Now we move on to the main part, the fun part. Let's all open our RevMan. I want you all to have you all downloaded RevMan?
No, dog. I think the link has not been shared in the group.
We did send the link in the group. I'll send it again. I'll give you guys 10 minutes to download it.
Okay.
I'm sending the link in the chat box.
Doc, it's a Windows version. Is there any like version for Mac or iOS or Mac OS?
I'm sending the other two. Wait, hold on. I'm sending two more links.
Okay.
This one is for Windows, and this is for Mac. Let's take 10 minutes. You guys can download it in the meantime. Now we're getting to the good part, the main part. I want you all to focus. Go get a drink or something. Make sure you're attentive. Are you guys done? Have you downloaded the software? It's called Revman 5.4. I want everyone to answer either on the mic or in the chat box. Have you guys downloaded Revman 5.4?
It's giving me error. I don't know, it's my laptop problem or like,
Did you try using the other links that I've sent in the chat box, the ones that are not the Drive links?
I just tried the Mac one. I'll try the others. Yeah.
It's giving you an error. Hold on, I'll try again. I'll send another link. Hold on. Is anyone else using a Mac? Have they been able to download it, or are all the Mac users facing an issue?
I am trying. I'm also getting some errors, and also Mac was
Okay.
not allowing to install. So I'm trying to like bypass it, but still I'm getting some errors.
This is the only other link that I have. The one that I just sent. Can you please let me know if this link is working? I don't have any other links.
Okay, it is also asking like the usage mode. So should it be standard mode or non-Cochrane mode?
Yeah, I'll explain in a bit. Let's start since I think everyone, the other person who wasn't able to download it, have you been able to download it?
I'm sure I do it. It's giving the warnings again that it might harm your computer and stuff. I don't know.
It won't,
But
it won't harm your computer. This is the link off of the official website. If it does, you can sue them.
okay. Yeah, we can go ahead, ma'am. I'll catch up.
Okay. So when you open your Revman, you're going to get this notification. It's going to ask you what form you want to, what mode you're going to be using. You're going to use the standard mode.
Okay.
Click on standard. Okay. And then
Mhm.
this is what should show up. Can you see my screen? Is my screen visible?
Yes, doc. Yes.
Thank you. So just click close on this one. You don't do anything, just click close. Then you click on the top left corner of your screen, you'd see this tiny little page icon. It says new when you click on it. You're going to click on this.
Okay.
You're going to get this screen over here, and you're going to click on next. Now this is where it all starts. You're going to use intervention review. There's different kinds of meta-analysis. There's a diagnostic test accuracy analysis. There's a network meta-analysis. We at our base level, we're going to start with intervention review. So you click on intervention review, and then you click on next. I will be I will be sending a document on the group. It will take me some time to accumulate all of this, but I'm going to write all of the steps of RevMan in that document. I'll make sure to do that. Okay, so now you get this. You're getting this, right? So now here you have to write your intervention and your whatever health problem it is. So in our case, let's, for example, assume that we're using data for we're testing the safety and efficacy of resmetirom in patients with NASH, right? So our intervention is resmetirom. So we're going to write resmetirom over here, which is our intervention. And then in this column, you write your patient population. So our patient population is patients with NASH. And then you click next. And then you get this option, which stage should the review start in? Full review. You choose full review, and then you press on finish. So what all did we do just now? We had a white screen appear in front of us. We clicked on first they said welcome. We clicked on next, and then they asked us what type of review it was going to be, and we clicked on intervention review. The next thing they asked was the interventions and the patient population, and we chose resmetirom and patients with NASH, and then we clicked on finish, and now this is what shows up, right? This is what shows up. This is not important to us. This main screen, it's not important to us. What we're going to be working with is this part on the left right here. This is the main thing that we're going to be working with. Okay. So now that we have started our RevMan, you will get data. When you've extracted data, it's going to be in one of three forms. Your data, it's either going to be raw data. For example, in this case, they're reporting the overall mortality. This data is, by the way, it's not true. The intervention group is resmetirom, the control group is placebo, but this data was not extracted from the studies that I was showing you before. This is data that I made up just to demonstrate how to put this into RevMan and analyze it, okay? So once you guys get started on your projects, and if you're having any issues with your analysis or your data extraction, we're going to be having 2 more sessions after this, and then you can come to us with all of your queries, and we're going to solve it in real time over Meet. So your data after data extraction is going to be in one of 3 forms. It's either going to be raw data, which is unprocessed data. For example, this, where they're reporting the mortality in each group, the intervention group as well as the control group. So this is the number of patients in the intervention group who died and the number of patients in the control group who died. So this is 269 patients of the total 4,687 patients in the intervention group died in this study. And then 194 out of 233 in this in the control group died. So this is data that is presented as it is. They didn't use any mathematical functions on this. The other way data could be presented is in the form of ratios, in the form of effect sizes. So odds ratios, risk ratios, hazard ratios. So it could be in one of those 3 forms. And then the third way data could be presented to you is in the form of raw continuous data. We did discuss the types of outcomes, right? And we said there's categorical, aka nominal outcomes, and then there's continuous outcomes. So this is the continuous outcomes, and we said that continuous outcomes are reported in one of 2 ways. They can either be weighted mean difference, also known as mean difference, and then the other is standard mean difference. remember this. Effect sizes for continuous outcomes, mean difference, also known as weighted mean difference, and standardized mean difference. So this is one way data could be reported. The other way is this raw data. And the third way is the effect sizes for dichotomous outcomes, which is risk ratios, odd ratios, and hazard ratios. So these are three ways that data is going to be reported in studies, and I'm going to show you the way to analyze all three of them. So the first and the most simple and easiest one is this right here, raw data. So let's analyze this data. Okay. So the way we do it is we go on to RevMan. First, the first step that we have to do before we do anything else is add the studies that we've selected. We have three studies, Stephen A. Harrison, three studies, all conducted by the same person in different years. So 2019, 2023, and 2024. So we're going to add this data. What we're going to do is we're going to click on studies and references. The first step to adding data is to click on studies and references, and you're going to double click here. This is what's going to pop up. This drop down is going to pop out. When you double click on studies and references, you got two options: references to studies and other references, right? Now you double click on references to studies, and then this is what drops down. Included studies, excluded studies awaiting classification, and ongoing studies. So we're going to add our included studies because we know what studies we're going to be included in our including in our meta-analysis. Once you click on this, you're going to right click here on included studies. And then you click on add study. Let's go over that once more. We double clicked on studies and references. Then we double clicked on references to studies. And then we right clicked on included studies and clicked on add study. This tab opened up. Now we're going to write our study data. So the first study is S.A. Harrison 2019, right? So the study ID that I'm going to write is this S.A. Harrison 2019. Now I could either write the year over here, or it's going to give me the option to write the year here. So if I write it in the the study ID, the first tab that I got, it's automatically going to use that year and autofill it in this one, right? So the first thing that showed up was the study ID. I entered S.A. Harrison 2019, which is the name of the first study that I'm including. I clicked on next. You don't change anything in this ever. You don't change the data source. This is it. And then you click on next. Then the year, which I already entered the first time, which was 2019. So it autofilled this. If I had just written S.A. Harrison, I would have had to write 2019 over here manually. Next, I click on next. You don't change anything over here either. And then you click on next. And then this is what shows up. What do you want to do after the wizard is closed? Nothing. Add a reference for the new study and add another study. Since we have three studies and we're adding all three of them, obviously, we click on add another study in the same section. And then you click on continue. This is the next study. We add the study ID for the second study, which is S.A. Harrison 2023. We don't change anything about this. 2023, it auto-filled it. We don't change anything in this. And then we add another study because we have three studies in total. And we click on continue. The third study is S.A. Harrison 2024. We don't change anything. We click on next. It auto-filled 2024. We click next. We don't change anything here. We click next. Now, this was the last study that we had to add. So we're not going to click on add another study. We're just going to click on nothing. And then we're going to click on finish. So far, is this clear? I want you all to add all three of these studies, because this is the data that we're working with. The first outcome that we're studying reports data as raw data. And these are the three studies that are reporting that data. And this is the data for those from those three studies. So I'm going to be making a forest plot. Since this is one outcome, and I did say that we will have one forest plot for each outcome. So we're going to make one forest plot in each of the three ways that data can be presented to you, so that you know what to do with data, whichever way it is being presented in a study, how to convert that into a forest plot. So the first way is if it was being presented to you as raw data, and this is how you're going to do it. So I added the three studies, which is S.A. Harrison 2019, 2023, and 2024. Now I want you all I'm giving you all 5 minutes to include these studies. Please let me know in the chat box once you're done. If you want me to repeat anything, please let me know. I will repeat. Once you've added the studies and you double click on included studies, you'll be able to see what studies you've added over here. Are we done? Have you guys included the studies?
Doc, can you repeat how to add the studies in included studies, because nothing is clicking when I'm clicking the included studies.
Oh, okay. I clicked on studies and references. I double clicked on
Hmm.
that. And then I double clicked on references to studies. And then on included studies, I right clicked on included studies and clicked on add study. Are you following?
Okay.
You open your
Yes.
Revman, I'm going to dictate the steps to you. I want you to follow them. Double click on studies and references, double click on references to studies, right click on included studies, and then click on add study. It's going to ask you how the study should be identified. You're going to write the name of the first study, which is S.A. Harrison 2019, 2019. Then you click on next. Then they're going to ask you the data source. You're not going to change anything about it. It's going to remain the same, the default version, which is published data only. Then you click on next. Then it's going to ask you which year the study was done. If you wrote S.A. Harrison 2019 in the first tab, you're not going to have to write 2019 again. It's going to auto-fill it for you. But if you only wrote S.A. Harrison over there, you're going to have to manually write 2019 over here. And then you click on next. And then you don't have to change anything about this identifiers tab. You just click on next. And then it's going to ask you what you want to do after the wizard is closed. And since we have 3 studies, not just one, you're going to click on the third option, which is add another study in the same section. And then you're going to click on continue and repeat the steps for the second study, which is S.A. Harrison 2023. And then repeat the same for the third study, which is S.A. Harrison 2024. And then once you've added the 3 studies, since we only have 3 studies, you're going to in the last tab, which is going to ask you what you want to do after the wizard is closed. Once you've added the third study, you're going to click on nothing and you're going to click on finish. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay. Let me know when you have all included the studies, when you've all added the studies.
Yeah, I have done it.
Okay, good. Now you can double click on included studies and check if all three of your studies were included and if you have made any spelling errors or any error in the year of the study. Now the next step is to add our outcome, right? So what we're going to, now we've added the studies, now we're going to add our outcome, which is the second step. So you're going to click on the studies and references tab, obviously, and then the reference to studies, and then the included studies. Now, once you've added the data, and all of the studies, you're going to add an outcome, which is in the data and analysis. This is step 2. We're adding our outcome. You right click on data and analysis, which is over here, right underneath studies and references. Right click on this and click on add comparison. This is the name of the comparison, which is the name of the outcome. Sorry, the name of the comparison, the two comparators, which is the intervention versus placebo. Sorry. Our intervention is resmetirom versus resmetirom versus placebo. This is our comparison. Then you click on next, and you're going to add an outcome under the new comparison. So we right clicked on data and analysis, and we clicked on add comparison. Sorry. Did anyone have any questions? I'll repeat. I'm repeating. First we added our studies. Once we were done with that, we started adding our outcome, for which we right clicked on data and analysis. We clicked on add comparison. It asked us what our comparison was, which was resmetirom versus placebo. So that's what we wrote over here. We wrote resmetirom versus placebo. Then we clicked on next. And here it's going to ask us what we want to do after the visit is closed. We obviously want to add an outcome. So we're going to click on the second option, which is add an outcome under the new comparison, and we're going to click on continue. Now this is where we want to, this is where where understanding what kind of data is being reported comes in, right? So for example, we are being reported data, sorry, this is the data we're working with, right? This is raw data. This is just reporting data as the author saw it. They saw that 269 patients in the intervention group died of the total of 4687, and then 194 in the control group died out of the total of 2333 in that. So this is raw data. When we have raw data, we use the effect sizes. Now we have raw data, obviously, so we're going to, when we have raw data only, then we use dichotomous. There's three kinds of data, right? We said we have dichotomous data, we have continuous data, and we have effect sizes, right? So for dichotomous data, which is raw data, we use dichotomous. If we have continuous data, which is, for example, height, BP, etc., we use continuous data. It can be raw as well, obviously. So raw data can be in one of two forms. It can either be dichotomous or it can be continuous. So if it's, you need to know what kind of data it is. And if for that same outcome, some studies are giving us raw data, while others are giving us effect sizes, we use genetic inverse variance. Now this was confusing, so I'm going to write it down in the chat box. For raw data, we if it's continuous, we use continuous. If it's dichotomous, we use dichotomous. We click on dichotomous. For the same outcome, GIV stands for genetic inverse variance, which is this one, right? So we use this if the data is being presented in the form of raw data as well as effect sizes. And then if the outcome is being reported only as effect sizes, we use GIV in that case as well. For the same option. So if we have raw data, if we have data in the form of raw data only, then we use continuous or dichotomous depending on what kind of data it is. If we have data being reported in the form of effect sizes, we use generic inverse variance, which is which can be shortened as GIP. And if we have data in the form of raw data as well as effect sizes, that is mixed data, we use generic inverse variance. Is that clear?
Yes.
Can you guys copy this down somewhere, send it on the group or somewhere? This is important.
Okay.
Yeah, I have posted it in the group.
Okay. So now, since mortality is, what kind of data is mortality? It's dichotomous, right? You're either dead or you're not. So it's raw data because we're just being presented data in the form. The data is just being presented as events out of the total number of patients in the sample size, and you're either dead or you're not. So it's dichotomous data, right? So we click on dichotomous, and then we click on next. What is the name of this outcome? This outcome is mortality. So we write mortality. And now we need to write the group label. The experimental is resmetirom, and the second one is placebo. And then you click on next. You don't change anything about the statistical method. It stays the same, Mantel-Haenszel. And the analysis model, as I said, is random effects model. You can choose between the two, but we prefer to use random effects model. And the effect measure that I said we prefer was risk ratio. This was all covered in day one of the series. Then we click on next. You don't change anything over here. You click on next again. Now they're asking you for the labels of the graph. So we're going to write the experimental over here. The experimental is the intervention. You're going to write resmetirom. Get rid of the brackets as well because it's going to copy paste this exactly as it is. And then the control is placebo. So that's what you write. And then you sort by, you can sort by any of these. You can sort by study ID, you can sort by effect sizes, by any of these, depending on your preference. But I prefer to sort it by the year of study. So the studies on the forest plot are going to show up in the order of the year. So 2019, 2022, 2023, and then 2024. Then we click on next. Now they're asking you what you want to do after the visit is closed. We don't just have one outcome, we have multiple outcomes, but first we'll work on one outcome. So I'm going to click on nothing. Then I'll show you how to add multiple outcomes as well. But if we had more outcomes, we would have clicked on this, add study data for the new outcome. So basically we are going to add study data for the new outcome. For now, I'm just going to show you I just showed you how to add an outcome, right? Do you want me to stop here so that you guys can add an outcome, or do you want me to add data and then you guys can practice both of these steps together?
You can show us how to add the data over here.
Okay. So now our outcome has been added. So now I'm going to add study data for this new outcome, which is mortality. So we click on continue. Now we have to click on the included studies. So not all studies are going to report the data for an outcome, right? As we saw when we were extracting data, there were two outcomes that were only being reported by one study, but not the other two, right? So you have to, for example, if there were like multiple studies over here, you have to select the studies that are reporting that outcome. So this outcome is being reported by all three. Mortality is being reported by all three, as you can see over here. So we're going to select all three. If it was being reported by two, we wouldn't have analyzed it in the first place. But assuming that we have 5 total studies and only 3 of them were reporting this outcome, we would have selected only the 3 which was reporting this outcome. So you're going to select all three. The trick to do this is to click on control, and then you're going to be able to select multiple outcomes all at once. So you click on any one of the studies, and then you click control and click on the other two studies or however many studies. Then you click on finish. So now this is what shows up. I want you all to do this. I will repeat the steps. You guys can open your admin. I'm going to repeat the steps. We first right clicked on data and analysis. Then we clicked on add comparison. Our comparison was resmetirom versus placebo. So basically here, this is where you'll add your intervention versus your control. Then we clicked on next, and then we then we did nothing. We clicked on finish. Sorry, we clicked on add an outcome under the new comparison. Sorry, we clicked on add an outcome under the new comparison. My bad. And then we clicked on continue. Now we had to select the data type, and since this is mortality, which is a yes or no question, is this a person dead, yes or no, which means this is a dichotomous outcome. If this outcome would have been blood pressure or height or anything else of the sort, this would have been continuous outcome. And if this was if the data was being reported in the form of effect sizes, risk ratio, odds ratio, etc., we would have selected generic inverse variance. So since this is raw data, we have to choose from between dichotomous and continuous, and we know that mortality is a dichotomous outcome. We click on dichotomous and we click on next. Now we have to name our outcome. What is the name of our outcome? It's mortality. And then you have to change the group labels. The experimental is resmetirom, so you switch out experimental for resmetirom, and instead of control, you write placebo. Then you click on next. You don't change anything about the statistical method. For the analysis method, you choose random effects model. And then for the effect measure, you use risk ratio. These are both preferred. You could use fixed effects model and you could use odds ratio, but it's preferable to use random effects for the analysis model and risk ratio for the effect measure. Then you click on next. You don't change anything about this total study confidence interval and everything. You just click on next. Now you have to enter the graph labels. Just backspace on the experimental and both of the brackets on both ends of it. And in front of favors, write resmetirom. And instead of control, you remove that and you write placebo. And in sort by, you select year of study. Then you click on finish. And then once you're done with that, you're going to double click on data and analysis, and you're going to see that you have this outcome that pops up, which is you double click on resmetirom versus placebo, which are our comparators, and you're going to click on mortality. You see that there's this table that shows up. You can extend this table, make it bigger. Now you're just going to add data. You had already extracted data in your Excel sheet. Now now you can just copy paste it as it is. But since my data isn't on Excel, my data is over here on PPD. I can still select it. So I'm going to select it, and I'm going to paste it onto it. It's preferred for us to do this manually to ensure that there's no errors being made. But this is what I did. So this is the data. I want you all to enter it. Take a picture of this with your phones and then put your phones by your laptop and enter the data. Done? Are we done? Do we have any questions? Do any of you have any questions?
So when we click the data and analysis, they are showing that okay. What is the name should the comparison have? So here we should put that resmetirom versus placebo, right?
Yes, because
Okay.
this is what our comparison is. I will send all
But
of the
here,
steps on the group in the form of a Word document by Tuesday at
okay.
latest.
Uh, but uh, but here there the option is not coming. Like how can we select all the three studies so that we can
Select all
put
the three
the
studies. You're selecting one and it's not letting you select another one. The trick to this is once you've selected one study, you press control on your keypad and then you select the rest of the two studies.
okay.
Did it work?
Can you show like how to do it at which step? I'm just like not getting the proper option, and there are some changes between this software and which the software which I have.
You know,
So
uh, in Mac we should press on Command instead of Control button.
okay.
Are you guys done?
Mhm. I don't know why, but this right click is not working in my software. But
Which I did. Have you entered your outcome? Did you select the studies? Were you able to add the studies?
within data and analysis, there is this. I don't know there, but there are multiple entries. Maybe because I tried multiple times, but there is resmetirom versus placebo, and within it, there is that 1.1 mortality. That is the outcome is there, but nothing is showing below
You
it.
double click on that. Double click on that. Are you
Okay.
able to see all of the studies under it?
No.
Or no? Then you haven't added the studies. Try looking at through all of the. You've added resmetirom versus placebo multiple times, right? Remove all of them. Just leave one.
Okay.
Do you know how to remove it? You can right click on the ones that you don't want, and you can click on delete comparison. Just leave one. So
But
once
the right.
once
Uh, okay, but the right click is not happening in my software. So there are some options at the top from where there I can only add or delete. Maybe
so
the
then
right click is not.
delete the comparison. You click on the one
Okay.
that you want, ones that you want to delete, and then you use that option and you delete the comparison that you don't want. So that when you double click on data and analysis, you only have resmetirom versus placebo once, not multiple times.
Okay, yes, I found the way to delete the thing. Yes, and I deleted all the other
Except one, right?
additional.
So you have resmetirom versus placebo once.
Yes.
And do you have the outcome mortality under it once you double click on it?
No, no.
No? Then you have to add the outcome. So you right click on resmetirom versus placebo and you click on add outcome, or use whatever option you have. Uh, Click on that and click on add outcome.
Okay, mortality. Yes. And the group level should be resmetirom, right?
Sorry,
Uh, yeah, I am trying to add. The group level should be resmetirom, right?
that would be the comparison. Yes. And the second group label will be placebo. The name of the outcome will be mortality. Then you click
Mm-hmm.
on next. Within statistical methods, you don't change anything. You let it stay on Mantel Hansel. And then
Mm-hmm.
for the analysis model, you could use either, but we prefer to use random effects. So you click on random effects.
Okay.
And then for the effect measure, you could use any of the two, odds ratio or risk ratio, but we prefer to use risk ratio. To use that,
Okay, yes. Then finally I got the option. What do you want to do after the wizard is closed?
you need to click on add study data for the new outcome and click on continue.
Okay. Okay, yes. Finally I got it. Yes. So I need to command select everything, right?
Yes, all of the studies that are reporting data for that outcome. You could have had like 13 multiple studies over here, like for example, 13 studies, and only three of them would have been could have been reporting mortality. So you would have only selected the three that were reporting data for mortality.
Yes, yes, I got it. Now I can see this thing. Yes. Thanks. Okay, now should I okay, I need to put the data, right?
Data. Yes. I
Okay,
will show you what the data is.
mm-hmm. 6, 7. Okay, yes, I've done it, doctor.
Okay.
So yes.
The other person, have you done it too? Azade, is it? Yes, have you done it? Are you guys all done? So this we entered data, and is this what shows
Yes,
up?
I've
Is this
done.
the result? The risk ratio? Okay, good. So this is what the outcome is. So this is the outcomes for each of the individual studies. The weight is
Mm-hmm.
basically the more the sample size of a study, the more the weight. So basically, how much it affects the forest plot. So all of these studies are almost have around two of these two have around the same number of total patients, na? And then the third one has a little bit lower of a sample size, so it has a lower weight. And then this is what we want, this total, and then in the brackets we have 95% confidence interval. So the total number of patients in the resmetirom group was 10,482, The total number of patients in the placebo group in all of the three studies combined was 6,680. The weight obviously was 100% in total. And then the risk ratio was 0.81. And then the 95% confidence interval was 0.68 and 0.96. Now, if I look at this forest plot, the way to maximize the forest plot is to click on this over here. Forest plot, there's an option called forest plot over here. It looks like this. Can you guys see it on your screens? Can you guys please confirm if you have the same results? If you have the same results, that
Yes.
means you've entered the data correctly. Okay, good. So
Yes.
now let's just go over this forest plot to see if we understood anything from day one. This forest plot shows that the risk ratio is 0.81 for mortality. Our outcome is mortality. And we did say that if the risk ratio is greater than 1, it means that there is a higher risk of that outcome occurring, the incidence of that outcome in the intervention group. And if it's less than 1, it means that there is a lower risk of incidence of that outcome in the intervention group. Our intervention group is resmetirom. Our risk ratio is less than 1, right? So 0.81 is less than 1. So this means that there is a 19% less chance of patients and people in the resmetirom group suffering from mortality. So there's a 19% less chance of patients in the resmetirom group dying, basically.
Okay.
And how do you know if it's significant or not? We did talk about significance. Significance, we said we judge by the p-value. This p-value. We have a p-value over here. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the test for overall effect. This p-value. What we need to focus on over here is this, the total 95% confidence interval and the total risk ratio. This is the risk ratio, which is this. And then in the brackets, we have the 95% confidence interval. And then we also have to focus on this p-value and on this I. So these are the three things that we have to focus on. This value over here, which is the risk ratio and the 95% confidence interval, the I square value, which is 56% over here, and the p-value, which is 0.02. Now, what is this p-value? This p-value shows us whether the data for the outcome is significant or not. This means that if it's like, they're telling us if it's significant or not, if the data that we provided for this outcome really means anything or not. We said on day one of the webinar that if this p-value is less than 0.005, this means that this data is significant and it holds value. So this is 0.02, which is less than 0.05, which means that this data is significant, and resmetirom actually does decrease the chances of mortality by 19%. So the way we would word it is we would say resmetirom significantly, because we have to write significant or insignificant before we explain the results. And we see that it is significant because it's less than 0.05. If it would have been 0.2, that's greater than 0.05, we would have said that resmetirom, there was no significant result of effect of resmetirom on mortality. But this is significant. So we write that resmetirom significantly decreases the incidence of mortality in this group, for example, this study. So, and then we explain the results in brackets. We say that the risk ratio is 0.81, the overall 95% confidence interval is this and this. We will look at the results and how to write them tomorrow. Today, we're just working on analysis. I don't think we'll be able to complete analysis today. We will have to continue this tomorrow because I'm taking this slow. I want to make sure you guys understand. So now we know what this is and we know what this is. This p-value shows a significance, whether the outcome is significant or not. And if it's less than 0.05, it's significant. If it's greater than 0.05, it's not significant. What is this I square? This is heterogeneity. Heterogeneity is given by I square. There's a certain threshold that shows us whether this heterogeneity is high or not. If this heterogeneity is high, this means that we need to remove one of the studies because the methodology was way off compared to the other studies, which messes the results of this meta-analysis or for this outcome. So this is what heterogeneity is.
Okay. Doctor, can you explain what is the meaning of that weightage? That is 37%, 37%,
Weightage
and
is
25%.
how much value each study holds in this forest plot. The greater the sample size, the greater the number of patients enrolled into that study, the greater the weight. So basically, when we're talking about a study, when we're conducting a study, For example, I'm conducting 3 studies, right? There's 3 studies being conducted in a hospital. One of the studies has enrolled 100 patients, the other has enrolled 200 patients, and the third one enrolled 300 patients, right? So how for any of the outcomes, for example, all 3 of them are studying the same outcomes. One of the outcomes is mortality. So we're trying to judge if an intervention, we're using the same intervention on all 3 studies and different patient populations. So the intervention, for example, let's call it A, is given to 100 patients in the first study, to 200 patients in the second study, and 300 patients in the third study, right? And about 10 patients in the first study died, 20 patients in the second study died, and 30 patients in the third study died. We would trust the third study more, and we would say that, okay, the third study shows that mortality is actually affected by the intervention A because it has a greater sample size. So the chances of this happening, so the matter of chance of mortality is reduced when the sample size is higher, right?
Yeah.
So that means that this study holds more weightage. If a
Okay.
greater number of patients are being given that intervention and a greater number of people are dying within that group, this means that that study holds some weightage. This outcome is pretty clinically significant. So that's what weightage is. The greater the sample size, the greater the weightage. So this the total number of patients in this study, you'll add 2, 3, 3, 3, and 4, 6, 7, 4, 6, 8, 7. That's about 37.3% of the weightage, because the total number of patients in this studies is 37.3% of the total number of total number of patients, which is 10,482 plus 6,680. The total weightage is obviously 100%. So you're dividing the weightage between these 3 studies based on the sample size of these 3 studies.
But yeah, what's confusing me is that in the first study and the second study, the total sample size is larger in the first study, and the second study is smaller, but still the weightage is same. So that's confusing me.
The weightage is same. Wait, hold on. 2, 8, 8, 8 plus 1 more. This is 4, 3, 30. And this is 4, 6, 8, 7. This is 7 plus. And you're right. I don't know. This is the software does this. We don't have to do anything about this. But this would, the 95% confidence interval also matters, right? This has a higher number of patients, but this is crossing the one line, right? So the confidence interval is 0.72 and 1.02. So if you draw a line from 0.72 to 1.02, it obviously crosses the line of no effect, which is this line over here, right? So
Yes,
this
yes.
is not as clinically significant. So it can't count all of these patients, which is why it has a lower weightage. If this would
Yeah.
not
So
have crossed the one line, like this one doesn't, even though the total number of patients in the first study is less than the total number of patients in the second study, but since the 95% confidence interval crosses the line of no effect, that kind of nulls out the sample size, the value that the sample size gave the study.
yeah, so I think like like the impact along with the sample size, both are affecting the weightage.
Yes, basically, because if it crosses the line of no effect, it doesn't really matter how much the sample size was. It has crossed the line of no effect. It doesn't matter what the sample size was. The impact has been affected, basically.
Yes,
Uh,
yes, got it.
okay. So we talked about this.
Yes.
We talked about this. Oh, heterogeneity. I was explaining heterogeneity. The full name for this is statistical heterogeneity, and basically, low heterogeneity means that the studies are basically, the methodology is almost the same, and the because of the method, say almost similar methodologies, the difference between the study results are not due to chance. They have clinical significance. They're actual true differences. They're not due to chance. So if heterogeneity basically means variability, right? So if the heterogeneity is less than 60% or less than 50%, that is ideal. If it's between 60 to 80%, it means moderate heterogeneity, and if it's greater than 80% and 90%, that means there's significant heterogeneity. And if there's a lot of heterogeneity, you need to find out which study is causing such heterogeneity, and you need to look at the results without that study as well. This outcome has pretty low heterogeneity. But if, for example, let's change the data a bit so that the heterogeneity comes up to that. Let's make this 1 and 2. Hold on, what was this? 99 and 106. The heterogeneity has gone up 88%. So there's something that's off here, because if you're giving the same intervention in the same manner, if the methodology is almost the same, the results from one of these shouldn't be this off, right? So the heterogeneity over here is 88%. So now when we have significant heterogeneity, we will in the results in the manuscript, we will obviously explain the results as is with all 3 studies. But we'll also, one by one, we will untick these studies and see if the heterogeneity improves. But when we, in cases where we have high heterogeneity, this is what we're supposed to do. I'm telling you this, okay? So one by one, we will untick the studies and we'll check if the heterogeneity has gone down. Once I untick the first one, which means that the first one, the data for the first one is not being accounted for. It's not being included in this. The weightage has gone down to 0 because we're not considering the data. Suppose we're assuming that this data isn't even here. So the heterogeneity has gone up, which means this is not the heterogeneous study. This is not the study that is causing the problem. So we put this back in, we tick this again, and we untick the second one and see if the heterogeneity has gone down, which it has gone down to 0% because this has a high sample size and this also has a increased sample size, and these are pretty close together in total. But the third one, once we do that, this is actually very confusing. This wouldn't be that way because this is, as I'm assuming these values, and this goes up to 66%. So according to the data that I've entered, this and this study, the results for these 2 studies, the first and third studies, makes sense, but the second one is way too less. The mortality is way too less according to the sample size, which is off according to the software, which should not be happening. So I'll have to explain the results. I'll have to tell them that the results for the SA Harrison 2023 study was different compared to the other 2, and I'd have to look through the methodology and I'll have to look through the limitations included written in this study, and I'd have to explain why the results are so off for this study. So I'd have to explain the results with all 3 studies combined, and then one without the heterogeneous study, where the heterogeneity has gone down. But now coming back to what the results actually were. Was this clear? Were you able to understand what I said?
Yes, it's now makes sense. It makes sense.
Okay. So this is our forest plot for the first one. Now we know how to make a forest plot for outcomes where the data is reported in the form of raw data. Are we clear on this? I will send the steps of doing this by Tuesday within the next week. The next kind of way that the data can be presented to us will be in the forms of ratios, which is this over here. For example, we'll extract data and we'll see the data in this form. So we'll have a ratio effect size for we'll have any sort of effect measure. It could be OR, which is odds ratio. It could be RR, which is risk ratio, and could be hazards ratio. And then we'll have the 95% confidence interval. We have to extract the 95 confidence interval along with the ratio. This is important. So now how do we analyze data that is given to us in this form? So now we'll add this. What outcome is this? Hold on, let me see what outcome it is. This is MI. I didn't mention it, so mention this over here, but the outcome is MI. So now we add another outcome, which is to extract data, and the data is being presented to us in the form of ratios. So now we have the same comparison, obviously, resmetirom versus placebo. We right click on that. Now I want you guys to focus. We're adding another outcome, but for this outcome, the data is being reported in the form of effect sizes. So odds ratio in our case. So now what we do is we right click on resmetirom versus placebo and we click on add outcome. Okay. And then, as I said before, I mentioned this in the chat box. If all of the studies are reporting the data in the form of effect sizes, we use generic inverse variance. And these are effect sizes. All of the studies are reporting data in the form of, let me get rid of this. I keep opening this. In this form. This is how we've been presented with the data, and we need to analyze this. So OR, RR, HR, all of them, they're effect sizes, right? So we said that if we're looking at, if the data is being presented to us in the form of effect sizes, we use generic inverse variance. So we had three ways that data could be presented to us. It could be in the form of raw data. All of the studies could report the data for an outcome as raw data, and in which case we would have used one of these two, depending on what the outcome was. If it was mortality, it would have been dichotomous. If it would have been changes in weight, then it would have been continuous, right? And if if the data was given to us in raw form, if the data is being given to us in the form of effect sizes only, we use generic inverse variance. And in the third case is if the outcome for the same outcome, some studies are reporting data as raw data and the others are reporting it as effect sizes, then also we would have used generic inverse variance. So this data is obviously in the form of effect sizes for all of the studies. So we use generic inverse variance and we click on next. Now the name of this outcome is MI, which is myocardial infarction. The group labels remain the same, which is resmetirom and placebo. And we click on next. We change nothing about statistical method. It automatically selects the best one. For the analysis model, we select random effects. For the effects measure, we use odds ratio because this is reporting odds ratio, right? This is reporting odds ratio. So we use odds ratio over here and we click next. Are you following so far?
Yes, doctor. Yes.
Okay. If you have any issues, please let me know. Okay. And then once we're done with this, the next thing we do is click on next. We don't change anything in the screen. And then for this, we change the labels, the graph labels. We change them to resmetirom and placebo. Sort by year of study. Next. Now we need to add study data for this new outcome. This new outcome is MI. So we click on add study data when we click on continue. All three studies are reporting this data for this outcome, right? So we click on all three. And then we finish. And this time we have this log of odds ratio and then the SE and then the weight. Are you guys done?
So here the effects measure would be odds ratio, right? Or risk ratio.
Odds ratio, yes. The
Right.
data is being reported in the form of odds ratio, yes.
Okay. And the model will be random.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we have got this.
Okay. So now we have this table, but notice that the data we have is in the form of odds ratio and 95% confidence interval. But this table wants us to enter the log of the odds ratio and the standard error. We don't have any of that. So what we do now is we click on this calculator option over here. You click on this and you enter what you have, the data that you have, right? So the total number of, for example, for this resmetirom, now we enter data for this, okay? So we have the odds ratio for resmetirom for this, right? We don't have the log of the odds ratio. So now we enter the odds ratio. Can you guys please take a picture of this because I'm doing the same. And then we can enter data using our phones.
Yes.
Okay. Now we enter the data over here, and it will calculate the log of the odds ratio and the rest of the standard error itself. The software will do that for us. This is for the first study, right? Because we clicked on the cell for the first study, and then we clicked on calculator. So now this is for the first study. You just enter what we have. We have the odds ratio, which is 0.87. And then the confidence interval, the start confidence interval start or the lower confidence interval was 0.69. And the end confidence interval was 1.09. But you didn't have to enter that the software entered it for you. Once you're done with this, you can click on update data table.
Yes.
Okay. So now I want you to do the same for the other two outcomes. I'll do it after you do so that we can check if you know or you get the concept, the general idea. The other person who was doing it with you, are they still here? Azade, I think. Oh, there's other people doing it as well. Okay, good. If you guys want me to present the data, I'll present it. Wait.
I have the picture.
Yes. Okay. For the rest of the people, if they, in case they don't have it.
Sure. Yes, doctor, done. I have done the thing.
Great. Very nice. So now we check. I'll do the same and then you can check if we did the right thing.
0.88
Okay.
and 0.67. Okay, yeah.
Always check the upper confidence interval to see if the software has made any issues. So the software will not make any issues if it's giving a different confidence interval. The end confidence interval, you've probably entered the wrong data. Now we have our forest plot. Okay. So we click this button over here to maximize the forest plot. Okay. So now this is what we have. There's three things very important that we have to look for, which is this right here, which is the odds ratio, and then this over here, and then this heterogeneity, and then the p-value, right? So first, let's look at the odds ratio. Hold on, you convert this odds ratio to risk. Oh, you can't do that. Okay. Sorry, this is, okay. So we look at the odds ratio, which is 0.86, which means that the odds of a person in the resmetirom group getting an MI is 13% lower than the people in the placebo group, right? But is this, we know now that resmetirom is better for people compared to placebo, because people who've taken placebo suffered from an MI, and less people in the resmetirom group suffered from an MI. But is this clinically significant? Is this statistically significant? These results, we look at the p-value. It's 0.09. Is this significant or not?
No.
Good. This is not significant. So this result, we will, when we're explaining this result in our manuscript, we'll tell them, we'll mention that resmetirom had no significant effect on the MI, or on the incidence of MI. And then we'll write 0.87, 95% confidence interval, and p value. The heterogeneity is 0%, which is ideal, which is excellent. And even if you weren't able to judge from the p-value, you would be able to judge from two other things. One is that the diamond, it's touching the line of no effect. The diamond is an overall result of our analysis, right? If it's touching the line of no effect, it means obviously it is not clinically significant. And the third thing that we can judge from is this 0.74 to 1.02. Does this have one in between? If we were to draw a line from 0.74 to 1.02, it would cross one, right? So
Yes.
these three ways is how we can judge whether our results are clinically significant or not. So this is the second way that data can be presented that's done. The first way was for the data to be in the form of raw data, and then we did that. And then the second way was for it to be in the form of ratios, and we did that. We're going to work with randomized control trials only, because once you're done with that, observational studies are exactly the same. The only difference is we have to make subgroups for them, because observational studies have a higher bias in them. So what if we have observational studies as well as randomized control trials, and we want to include both of them in our meta-analysis? We can absolutely pool them together. We can use the data and we can analyze it. However, there is significant bias in observational studies, and there's no bias in randomized control trials, because everything is randomized, everything is blinded, at least singly blinded. So, which means there's very low bias in randomized control trials compared to all other observational studies. So, in case we have to include both observational studies and randomized control trials, we would have to perform a subgroup analysis. So, we would have to make two subgroups, one for the randomized control trials and one for the observational studies. I'll show you how to make subgroups. But once we make subgroups, this is what our forest plot will look like. So, and a form of original studies is called retrospective cohort. Another one is prospective cohort, and then randomized control trials. So we had two randomized control trials that were reporting this specific outcome, and then three retrospective cohorts, and then one prospective cohort. So you could have one study in your subgroup, but you would have to have different subgroups for each type of studies, right? Because this study, prospective cohort and retrospective cohort, would have significant bias in them, but randomized control trials don't have significant bias on them. So if you were to pool them together and just make one, if you weren't making subgroup and just pooling the data together as one group, that would mess up the data, obviously, because there's bias in more than half of the data. In 4 of the study, there's bias, and then in 2 of the studies, there's no bias, and it's all blinded and good to go. So the journal is obviously going to ask you to explain why there's so much bias once you conduct the quality assessment and you do the ROB analysis. You're going to have a red spot for the rest of the 3 studies, for the 4 studies in the retrospective cohort and the prospective cohort, but the randomized control trial is going to be green because it has very less bias, very low bias. So you'll have to explain that. So in order to explain that, you have to explain that you made separate subgroups. So you looked at the data as a whole, this one right here, and then you also individually looked at the data as well. So for the retrospective cohorts only, you had this was the result. For the randomized control trial only, this was the result. For the prospective cohort only, this was the result. And then for the overall thing, this one at the bottom was the result. So you're going to look at the result overall, and you're going to look at the result individually. Now, once we have this kind of a forest plot, what do we prefer to look at? Obviously, our first option, our preferred option would be to look at the randomized control trials, the results presented by the randomized control trials. This is the result that we're going to trust most. However, there is a threshold. If there are 3,000 patients or more in the randomized control trials only. If there are a total of 3,000 patients or more in the randomized control trials, all of the studies included, then we prefer to look at the results in the randomized control trials when we're explaining the results in the manuscript. However, if there are less than 3,000 results, 3,000 patients in all of the studies in the all of the randomized control trials included, if there's less than 3,000 patients, then we look at the overall result. But in no case whatsoever do we look at the observational studies only. You can either look at the randomized control trials in the case where you have greater than 3,000 or more sample size in the randomized control trials, all of them combined, or if you have less than 3,000 patients in the randomized control trials, all of them combined, then you look at the overall thing, but you never look at the observational study only, because there's so much bias, you can't really trust the results so in that. So this is something important I wanted to put out there. The third way we could be presented data is in the form of raw continuous data, right? Raw continuous data means data that has not been processed, and it's not just events and total. It's something that's changing. It's continuous. So it's in the form of weighted mean difference or standardized mean difference. And for the continuous data, like for example, when we looked at the effect sizes, it was given along with 95% confidence interval, right? But when we look at continuous raw data, it is given in the form of standardized or weighted mean difference, and then it's given along with SD, which is standard difference, right? So how do we process this data? Let me show you. For this, the rest of the two are clear, right?
Yes.
Okay. So now this is the last one. And then we're going to look at subgroup analysis, and then we're going to be done. Okay, so we add another outcome over here. And the data we're using is this over here. Please take a screenshot of this. This is change in
Okay.
body weight in patients taking resmetirom versus placebo, change in body weight, which is obviously continuous data. Okay, so what kind of data is this? This is raw data. And for raw data, we said if all of the studies are reporting raw data, we use one of these two, right? And we check if the data is continuous or dichotomous. This data is continuous. So we click on continuous and we click on next. What name should the outcome have? This is change in body weight. The labels remain the same. Then you click on next. The statistical method remains the same. The analysis model is supposed to be changed to random effects. Now you use mean difference. When I was teaching you guys about effect sizes for continuous data, I repeatedly told you that mean difference is also called weighted mean difference. So as to make sure you guys aren't confused. So if it says mean difference over here, it means weighted mean difference, not standardized mean difference. So our data is in the form of weighted mean difference or mean difference. So we select mean difference. If it was given in the form of standardized mean difference, we would have selected this, but our data is in the form of mean difference. Okay, and then we click on next, finish. And this is what we have. Now you just enter data. Before you enter data, you have to enter the studies. So you right click on change in body weight in the left panel, and you click on add study data, and you select all the studies you want to add the data for, and you click on finish. Now you enter the data. Let me know when you guys are done.
Yes, done, doctor. Doctor, we cannot hear you.
Are you guys done?
Yes, doctor.
Okay.
Yes.
So this was what our data showed, right? So this forest plot it's not really, we can't really read, it's not uh, so we can use the scale and we can move this around so that the data is a bit more evenly spread out, and we can look at the forest plot and then we can maximize it. So can anyone tell me two differences between this forest plot and the other two forest plots that we had? And don't tell me the color is green. I know that's not a difference.
Between which two?
This forest plot and the other two that we've done before.
It doesn't touch the midline, so it's
No, but that depends on the data. Let me tell you. One thing that we notice is that there's a 0 over here instead of a 1.
Mhm.
What's the other thing that you notice?
The mean difference, it's minus 0.45, so it is represented in a different way.
Okay, good. So this is in negatives. We didn't have any negative values over there. The reason for this is because this center line is is 0, right? It's not 1. This is a continuous outcome. So if since this outcome is body weight, change in body weight, right? So if we were talking about ratios, we were talking about 1 and greater than 1 and less than 1. But for continuous outcomes, we cannot do that ratio. It's not a ratio. It won't be 1 will not be the midline. So since this is 0, if there's a decrease in the body weight of patients taking the experimental group, it obviously will be given in negative because this is a continuous outcome. So that's what this means. So if it's 4.14, this means that there is a mean difference of 4.14, negative 4.14, which means that there's a mean reduction of 4.14 kgs in weight in patients in the experimental group because the diamond is on the side of the experimental group, which is resmetirom, right? And then this is the 95% confidence interval. It does not cross the 1 line, which means it's statistically significant, which we can also see with the p-value, which is way lower than 0.05. And then there's no heterogeneity. So this is how you read a forest plot with raw continuous data and how you make a forest plot with raw continuous data. Is this clear? Do I need to go slower? Do I need to explain anything?
Doctor, can you just repeat what you said about this mean difference?
I said when we look at ratios, we look at whether they're 1, greater than 1 or less than 1, right? Because it's a comparison. Ratio is a comparison, right? But this is continuous data. We're not comparing it to 1 or 1 is the midline is 0. Obviously, this is continuous data. So if, for example, I was in the group with the intervention, you were in the group with the placebo, right? And then there was a reduction in a mean reduction in the patients in the intervention group and a mean um, increase in the patients in the placebo group, right? Or no change in the body weight of the patients in the placebo group. How would I compare that? I wouldn't make a ratio of that. This is continuous data. This is not effect size. This is not ratios. So to show that the intervention group has a mean difference, we say positive. We give the values in positive or negative. So if there was to be a mean increase in the body weight of patients in the intervention group, this would have been plus 4.14, which means that there would have been no negative sign, no positive sign over here, positive value. But since there's a mean reduction in the body weight of the patients in the experimental group, which is resmetirom, we write minus 4.14. Do you see this? The scale to the left
Yes.
of the 0, it's in negatives. And this diamond is to the left of the line of no effect. This line is called line of no effect. And it's not crossing the line of no effect, which means that it's statistically significant. So there is a mean reduction of 4.14 kgs in the mean reduction means in the average weight is reduced by reduced by 4.14 kgs in patients in the resmetirom group as compared to the patients in the placebo group.
Okay.
Let me change that. Oh, by the way, I didn't add the labels, right? The way to fix this is because you're going to copy this forest. You're going to click on this and you're going to copy this forest plot from here and paste it on your manuscript as it is. So I want to write what the labels are. I want to make sure this looks nice and this is accurate, right? But I forgot to add the labels for this graph. The way to change that or change anything about your forest plot or your table here is not to delete this and start over again. No, you can click on this settings settings icon over here, and then you can change whatever you want to change. I just want to change the labels of the graph, so I'll click on graph and I'll change it. And I'll sort it by year of study. The analysis details are fine. The analysis method is okay. This is fine. I apply the changes. There we have it. Is this clear? That's all I had to teach you guys today. This is basically what analysis is. Yes. Now tomorrow we're going to work on how to interpret the results of this analysis. Although we did go over it today very briefly, but I'm going to go into the details of it, and then we're going to work on manuscript writing tomorrow. People joining tomorrow who did not join today for the analysis, I'll probably have to go over the analysis again. I'll probably not go over it though. It's a waste of your time. So the recorded lecture is going to be uploaded if you want to go over this again. I'll also send a document with the steps for each of the three kinds of data. And then you guys can refer to that in the future. But this is basically all there is to analysis. This is our forest. These are our forest plots. The next step is now our analysis is done. And what was the other thing that we had to do according to the steps of meta-analysis? We're done with deciding the topic. We're done with the systematic search. We extracted data. We did the analysis. We have to assess the quality of the included studies. I didn't want to do this today because it would have taken up a lot of time. So we're going to do the quality assessment tomorrow, and then we're going to write the manuscript tomorrow. So that's all that is left, and then the submission. So I'm going to show you the submission as well. So this is all there is to analysis. If there's any questions, please let me know. I'm here for the next 10 minutes.
So, Doc, can you give us something to practice on so that we can do
Give you
this,
guys
try
something to
on this
practice
thing?
on data extraction as well as analysis.
Yeah, both of them.
Okay, I will send these three studies, the resmetirom studies, on the group right now, and I want you all to extract the data for that and then also analyze that data. And I have the analysis results, and we can compare. I'll compare them to the analysis results. You'll have until next Friday to do this. Until next Sunday, actually, to do this. You can take your time because I will send the steps because it's obviously hard to get everything into your brain the first time. You'll have to do this over and over again, and you'll get the hang of it. So I'll send the steps, and I'll give you until next Sunday to work on that data, to extract the data from those studies, and to analyze it. And then we can have an additional meeting next Sunday. Other than the two that we have promised you guys, I will do an additional meeting next Sunday where we can go over the results, go over everyone's work. You guys can share your screens, and if there's any error, I'll let you know. Does that work for everyone?
Yes.
Are we using the software by ourselves? Yes, I just taught you how to use this software. Now you're going to use the same software for the rest of your life. Whatever meta-analysis you're doing, you'll use this software.
Okay. Yeah, and it makes sense. Previously, it is difficult to go through this for the first time, but really the way you showed the way or the go through each steps, now things make sense.
Thank you. I will send the steps. Don't worry. I'll try to get it done as soon as I can.
Doctor,
Thank you,
can you? Yes. Okay. Can you, doctor? Can you just on the next day? Can you just go through the topic searching? How will we go for searching the topics again? You can
Again,
touch on
okay,
that.
for sure. Can you remind me tomorrow? Also, Dr. Nimra Tahir, are you using a Mac or Windows? Windows? Okay. Use this link over here. Wait, I'll send the link again. If all of the studies are reporting the data for an outcome has effect sizes, we use react. Oh, this I know this. Does anyone have any other questions? I'm sending the link to you, Dr. Nimra Tahir, in the chat box.
No, thank you, Doc.
Thank you, doc. Thank you for the awesome discussion.
Thank you so much for joining, you guys. This is the link. If you guys have any questions, you have uh, until tomorrow to ask me. We have our last day tomorrow, and then next Sunday it's an additional class. We weren't planning on this class, but I'll take time out and I'll send uh, the three trials on the group, and then you guys can extract data and analyze it. Both tasks. Okay. Try this one. Try this link. Let me know if it's working, Dr. Nimra. It's working. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. Yes, the recording will be uploaded. Um, but you can message me anytime. I remember I'll take a picture of all of you all's name. You guys can personally message me and I will respond to your queries. I don't normally do that, but you guys have been very patient and very present.
Thank you so much, doctor. That
Thank you
means
so much.
it.
You
That
guys
means
can ask me any questions you want.
okay.
Okay. We're done for the day. And then tomorrow, please join on time. And we're going to be discussing manuscript writing and ROB assessment, which is quality assessment. And then we'll be done with the meta-analysis workshop. Okay.
Sure,
Thank you
doctor.
so
And
much.
doctor, I just
Yes.
like really want to. Then so for up you are going to review our the task that you gave on Sunday, and then what's the next plan of action, or how it's going to be, how the things are going to be after that.
Okay, so you guys have until next Sunday to. I'll send the trials. You guys will extract the data and you guys will and analyze it on Revman. And you guys will share. We'll have a meeting next Sunday, and you guys will share your screen and show us the results. I'll compare the results to the ones that I have already done, and then I'll tell you guys if you've made any mistakes. If you guys have any queries, any questions, you guys can send it to me. Or rather, one thing that we can do is you guys can send me the file, the Revman file. Uh, I'll show you how to save and send the Revman file right now. And you guys can send me the Revman files and I'll review them so that nobody's name gets disclosed in case anyone has any issues with that. So the way to save it is you go on to file and you go on to save as, and then you can save it.
Mm-hmm.
And then to send it to anyone, you export it. The data and analysis part. You only need to the data when you send me the data and analysis. It's only going to send me the the forest plots. The text of review is this part right here. This is basically the Revman trying to write our manuscript for us, but we don't need it to do it for us because there's a particular way we want to write it that journals require us to write it that way. So we write it ourselves. You don't need to do this. You don't need any of this. However, there is an option of quality assessment built into Revman. So I'm going to teach that as well. So I'm going to teach you how to use Revman for risk of bias and as well as the ROB tool. So you guys can save your files and export it and send it to me over WhatsApp. And on Sunday, I will share my screen. I will tell you guys what if you've made any errors. I'll answer any questions. We'll have a 2.5 hour meeting for this. And
Hello.
then after that,
Hello.
uh, hello, Dr. Ahmed.
Okay, can you guys hear me? Hello.
Yes, doctor.
Yes.
We can
Okay,
hear.
so today I have seen that very little participants have joined the meeting. So, Dr. Manahil, what do you think? I want to make a sub leader as well, because you guys have to take all of the participants with yourself, because these tasks are going to be divided on everyone, right? So, it's like for your own benefit, you also have to push your mates as well, because we are going to divide the task. And today, like, we have very little participants. Hello.
Yeah. Yes, doctor. I think, doctor, it's also it's a little bit late, so that's why many
No,
participants
like
have
from
left.
the beginning of this session, I was only seeing like 8 people, and since like we have more than 20 people up for, in each group,
Mhm.
like 15 to 16. So, Dr. Manahil, what do you think? Shall we just make some sub leaders so that they can just manage their mats within the respective groups?
Once we start the project, we can make sub leaders. But for now, I feel like maybe they have commitments, so they won't. Maybe they'll watch the recordings and they'll be just as active when we're doing our projects. So I'll wait until then,
Okay.
and then if nobody's contributing, I'll let you know, and then we can figure something out.
Okay, sure. But after this session, Dr. Amish, Dr. Nimra, Abhinaya, please just drop a message in our groups in order to like motivate your, mates, group mates to just participate in these classes live, because, like, as you guys are just asking Dr. Manahil if you guys have any queries. So in the recording, the recording won't benefit them as much as these live sessions are benefiting, right?
Yes. Yes, doctor. Yes, you
Yes.
are absolutely right.
Okay,
Yes.
because like in the end you have to be like as a group. So if you're just checking your group mates with yourself, so it's going to benefit each and everyone. Okay,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
thank you so much.
Yes.
Yes, Dr. Mana, you can carry on. Thank you so much.
Okay, so this was all I had for you guys today, and we'll continue tomorrow. Are there any questions? Are you guys sure you don't have any questions? You can take today to go over this again, and then you guys have until next Sunday as well. And then after that, we're going to you or every single person in that group has to come up with a topic. So if there's 10 people in a group, if there's 10 mentees in a group, I'm expecting 10 topics, which is going to be randomized control trials only. You have to make sure there's no meta analysis on it. And then you do your best to check for the viability and the feasibility. There has to be at least 3 randomized control trials. You're going to put that into a Word document. You're going to write down you're going to add the link of the randomized control trials, the primary endpoints, and the sample size. So for all three out or however many randomized control trials you have, you're going to add that to a Word document and you're going to send it on the group. So once you guys will have 1 week to come up with topics, then I'll take 2 to 3 days to go over all of the topics, and I'll select the top 3 topics, which I'll send to Dr. Muaz, and he'll select the best one. And whoever's topic is selected gets the second or third authorship, because the first authorship, according to ICJME guidelines, goes to the mentor. However, if someone is putting in a lot of work, we will make sure that they get first authorship if the mentor is not giving in as much time as they should. Everything is going to be fair, everything is going to be according to the ICJME guidelines, and we're going to make sure that by the end of all of this, you understand every single step of a meta analysis, and you're sufficient enough to independently conduct a meta analysis. Any more
Thanks.
questions?
No, doctor.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. You guys can leave. Bye bye.
Yes. Have a great day ahead, doctor.